Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Team Never Quit podcast. As always, thank you guys for listening and watching, and please hit that like and subscribe button if you like to see our shows. So today, before we get to our special guests, let's kick it off with our weekly Patreon question. This week, we have got, what is the coolest event you've ever been to?
Ooh.
Man, that's freaking tough.
That's really tough.
I've got one that, I mean, it's hard to narrow down the actually coolest one, but one I will never forget was that Spike TV Awards.
Oh my gosh.
in
You
LA.
bet. That should be your number
Yes.
one.
That probably is my number one. I mean, that was
Let me tell you,
insane.
that damn well better be your number one, man.
So to paint a picture, Hunter was 14 and the movie Lone Survivor had just come out and they were awarding Mark Wahlberg with an award for the movie, and Mark was giving it to Marcus. So we were there, Hunter went with us, and we were sitting at the table with Mark, but there was also the cover models of the swimsuit Sports Illustrated.
It was the Victoria's Secret Angels.
It was the Victoria's Secret Angels. They were literally the cover of that magazine.
At the table, sitting right next to us.
And they had Mark Wahlberg sitting next to them, and he's married, and he stands up. He's like, I'm married. I can't sit next to him. And he puts Hunter in his place. And so Hunter is sitting with them, and they were so sweet and beautiful, but they were so sweet to Hunter. And I think he even got a kiss on the cheek.
It did. And I got a number.
Yeah.
Did you call it?
No, I mean, you took that number more than I did.
I did.
Wait, yeah, you wound up being buddies.
I ended up being friends with one of them. But yeah, it was just a really neat event for Hunter, especially.
I remember sitting at the table thinking, all right, that was a good one.
Yeah. What's your
That was
favorite
cool.
event, babe?
That was a good one. Probably when we shut down the LA freeway with the Sons of Anarchy. That one pops straight into my
That was
mind.
a cool.
That one, and when I sunk the basketball at the...
That was really cool. Marcus
At
got
the
to shoot
free
a free throw at the Houston Rockets game, and they said, "Don't be mad if he doesn't make it. Nobody makes it. Like even the best athletes, they don't make it." He freaking made it,
You made it.
and I was jumping for
you talk
joy.
about funny. They brought me out ahead of time. They're like, "Hey man, take a couple of shots." So I took one shot, and it stuck in between the rim and the backboard.
Yeah.
So the guy standing next to me goes, "Well, I've never seen that happen, but go ahead." I threw the next one up and completely missed it. Like I just, my hands are sweating. We're in the auditorium. He's like, "All right, it's all right, nerves." He's like, "We're gonna do it one more time." He gave me another ball. I threw up here. It stuck behind the backboard and the
Again.
rim again.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, "Well, I've definitely never seen that." He's like, "I'll tell you what, we're just gonna go back." So he sends me back there by myself. I'm sweating it, and then I'm
all the nerves are just...
yeah, and then everyone's always telling me, he's like, "No one can do this. No, it's fine."
Yeah, they're
you know?
like, "Don't worry about it. Nobody can do it."
Which I think is kind of a negative thing, right? You should always tell people like, "Hey."
They're priming you.
Yeah, right, exactly.
priming.
So, yeah, sure enough, man, I sunk it.
I
And,
was
that
so excited. I'm videoing it, and you can hear me.
Yeah, I think that was what
jumping
was
and
so-
I'm screaming. Oh my god!
The best part was her reaction. That you could hear her, man, over everybody. She was screaming. She's like, "You did it!" And I was like, "All right."
So excited.
Yeah.
I think my favorite event was right when we first started dating. Glenn Beck did an event called Restoring Honor Rally in Washington, D.C., and he had all kinds of people come out for it. But it looked like the scenes from Forrest Gump when Jenny's running through the fountain. Do you remember that?
I thought about doing that for her, actually. When
Yeah. So it was just a crazy amount of people, and
energy was good too.
the energy was really good. It was just a really neat event. I've never seen, still to this day, I've never seen anything like it. And just the caliber of people that he brought on to the stage that day was really, really neat. I think that was my favorite event I've ever been to.
All right, what about you?
Man, I'm thinking, there were so many. They're probably not like my personal events. I think probably presidential movements or events that I've gone with the president. Maybe, you know which one stands out? Buckingham Palace. I went with President Obama to Buckingham Palace.
All right,
And,
I'm listening.
and
I hadn't been in there.
Oh, you haven't been
Yeah,
in
well,
there.
they hadn't called me up yet. I've been still waiting on.
You're on standby. Well, technically, they didn't call me either. I was the guest of the guest of the guest. So I remember standing post, and you're in Buckingham Palace, and I'm standing there, and you're just watching everybody go through, and I just, that was pretty amazing. And then, I can't remember if it was the Queen. He went for a walk with the Queen on the grounds, but underneath Buckingham Palace, a lot of people don't know. It's like it's a maze. There's a whole underneath level, and it's a business. There's cafeterias, there's staff. I mean, there were tons of people there. I guess it wasn't really an event, but a place to visit, and we went there with the president. It was just the most amazing experience.
Oh, anywhere he goes, that's an event.
That is.
Yeah.
It is an event.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's an event. Well, I've come here quite a bit to Texas, not here, but Waco. I've spent many a time in Waco with President Bush.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Love that family.
Yeah.
They're great.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for answering that. We're so happy to have you here today and just to hear your story. I'm always fascinated with women that go into any kind of service at all, but especially like you've done. So we're excited to hear your story.
Well, I'm excited to be here. When your movie came out, so I was Secret Service, and I went with a couple of agents, and we actually went to the movie theater and we watched your movie.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. We all sat there, and we were just like with our mouths open. And it was really, we all just sat there. A couple of the guys might have had a couple of tears come down their eyes. But that's when my first experience. And then I got your book and I read it. I read it cover to cover in maybe a couple of days. I was on Dignitary Protective Division in D.C. I just moved there. And I crushed your book super fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
The best compliment I get is from like the service guy, the Secret Service. The services that most people don't talk about. And all they usually do when they walk up to me, you could tell they're just like, damn, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If once I had my ass whipped so bad it affected those guys, that's how I know.
Yeah.
Like when our toughest, because most people don't talk to them, and they definitely don't talk, right? And it's just the way y'all are. You have to be like that, and we get that mystery. But every now and again, some of y'all break ranks and be like, "Damn."
Oh yeah.
So that's how I know. Because to me, I had to go through all those procedures to block all that out, to the levels, to progress through it. So it's funny how a human can remind you. And it's all about what y'all went through, what y'all have to go through. And that's where, when y'all say something, it hits me a lot harder.
We were sitting there and everyone was like, we were all in tears. Like, and you're trying to fight it because everyone's like, it's not your style, but you just couldn't help it. And it was.
Aww. Yeah, it is a powerful movie. It just
powerful.
came out again on Netflix. They did like a re-release.
Well, it's playing on the plane. I watched.
Oh, really?
It was playing on the flight on my way here. I came from New York City and I saw it and I was like, and in my head I was like, they better have it playing. I am going to Houston. I'm going to his hometown. They know better.
They downloaded it for you.
They just started that again. I think it's because it's the 10-year anniversary of the release. So they're kind of recycling it. But it's neat to see.
Back to where'd you come from? I want to know that. Where were you born?
I was born in Harlem, New York. My parents were immigrants. They're Greek. So when they
from
like Greek. Like
my parents are
my Greek
parents
wedding, that whole
yes.
that kind of Greek.
We call them OTB. I can say it off the boat. And both my parents were literally off the boat.
I love that. When y'all when we bring
from
people in and their background, please use all that. I love that.
Yeah.
I can say it, but they literally both came on a boat. They came at different times, but they were on a boat. My dad was actually in the Greek Navy, Merchant Marine, so he came and on his own separately, and then my mom came when she was 19. So they grew up very poor. There's no food. There was civil unrest in Greece, and my grandmother, got her kids, and it was really just, we can't survive here. So they came, via boat here. And when our parents got together, we lived in Harlem. I was born in Harlem, so I was born in the U.S. And then we lived in an area called Washington Heights, and it's interesting.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's a rough area. So it was mostly a lot of immigrants, a lot of minorities. It's just, it's just where you would go. And my dad, when he came, he went from being in the Navy as a captain and then Merchant Marines as a captain.
Oh, yeah.
And he comes to the U.S. and he can't find a job. Nobody wants to hire him. And his first job, I don't remember, he had to tell me, but I knew about it. he would go from place to place to place. He had some cooking skills because he also cooked on the ship when he was younger, and he was trying to find jobs. No one's hiring. His English is super broken. And he goes into this donut shop, like a coffee shop, donut shop, and he says to them, are you looking for help? And the guy's like, no. And he's trying to rush him out. And at that point, my dad was just so just, I got to find something. Mm-hmm. And he turned around and he says to the guy, I'll just work for you for free. He's like, just let me work for free. Maybe give me a little bit of food to take home. He's like, let me maybe build my resume or at a coffee shop. So that way when I go out and I ask for work, I could say, hey, I worked here.
Yeah.
And the guy just was like, all right, trash is in the back, dumpsters in the back, here's a mop. My dad's first job in America, he worked for free.
Wow.
That's starting
powerful.
in America.
Yeah.
When you hear those stories, did he come in through Ellis Island, through past the Statue of Liberty and all that? Because those stories,
they came in, yes.
When they came in like that, and then they started from nothing, and then it's almost like the 5 boroughs in New York, they were just packed full of that. Mm-hmm. And you could see why everyone was scrounging to get something, and there's tensions in there. Because people are not only hungry, they're hungry. Like they want something. And then what came out of that is amazing, though.
Yeah, they worked really hard. I mean, my dad, he worked, then he was offered the job and he worked in a donut shop. My dad, everything, donut shop, New York City taxi driver. He had stories with that. Construction. I mean, and my mom worked in a factory in the beginning, and then she went to a beauty school to learn how to do hair. And so she went and learned how to do hair and opened up her own small business. So they were very much laborers. I mean, everybody was working in my home. My grandmother worked in a pita factory making Greek pitas.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Brothers or sisters?
I have a brother. He does construction. Uh-huh. He kind of followed in my dad. Yeah.
Aww.
I have a brother.
So growing up in that area, how did you know that you wanted to get into the job that you got into?
Zero. I had no clue. I studied fine art and international affairs, political science. I didn't even like law enforcement. I get pulled over. I was a brat. It's wild, like the way life turns out. I always think too, because we lived in public housing, which was where there's always a lot of crime. And I think we weren't allowed to go out. We weren't allowed to play with other kids. I couldn't go over other people's houses. Fun was when the fire department would maybe come by in the summer and open up the fire hydrants and we'd run through them. I kid you not, that was like going to that's exactly what we did. That was going to the pool. And so I think you get tired of being kind of like cocooned like that. My parents were really always super afraid. So I guess like I rebelled against it. You get tired of being told no this, no that. And not that they were doing anything wrong. I even got into this really good school, and it was in Brooklyn. It was called Brooklyn Tech. I tested into it to go for high school. I couldn't go. My mother's like, there's no way you're going on a train or on a bus to go to that school. She's like, I can't take you. She had to be at work. She's like, you're not going. So I think maybe you grow up and you want to protect yourself. You want to protect your family. So it organically happened. But while I was college, though, I interned for a woman named Carolyn McCarthy. She was a congresswoman. Mm. And I found out that she was looking for interns. And so I thought, what an amazing experience to learn. I had no exposure to spaces like this. My parents had no knowns, no connects, nothing. And so I put in my name, I interviewed. I don't know how I got it. Maybe because it was free, it was non-paid, but I didn't care. And for me, I was like, wow, I'm going to intern for a congressperson. And I started there. I did it.
Well, let's talk just real fast. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Because that's the part that gets everybody.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling this way. I was like, how do you get there? How did you? And when you see somebody in those congressional staffers, like, what, you obviously had to know somebody.
Nope.
I mean, I don't know why we think that. Why that's the first thing that goes into our head, but for whatever reason, the most important thing you did was just go.
You just went and applied.
Yeah, I was never brought up to be stagnant, mm-hmm. and my dad never wanted to hear it. He'd be like, go do it, go figure it out. Yeah. Everything was like, figure it out. No, I just heard she was looking for interns who wants to put their name in. And I never had the narrative in my head, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. And I think like a lot of times today you hear like confidence, you need motivation. And I was never brought up to look or think to seek any of those things. It was just you do things. And I think maybe sometimes people get inhibited because they think, I need to be this mentally to do this. Where it's like, that's an obstacle. When I hear like, I don't have the confidence or I need motivation, it's like, do you really?
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't grow up with that. So I thought, well, why not me? Why can't I? Yeah. So maybe because I always had that mindset, and I heard no a lot growing up, so I didn't care if I heard no. I was like, so what? Let them say no. But they didn't say no.
That confidence thing's huge. I mean, people who don't have that, and look at people who do have that, but actually don't have the skills to back it up. Sometimes they just, and then I've had the confidence knocked out of me. I got my ass kicked so bad it was gone.
When was the worst, do you think?
Afghanistan is when I got, when 2005 is, and I've been whipped plenty of times, but that one, I don't know what happened. The best way I describe it is like a NASCAR racer when they get in a wreck, they're kind of scared to get behind the wheel. I knew what I was and what my capabilities were. I was just scared to do it. Apprehensive, whatever that was. And I attribute that to my confidence getting knocked out of me. And I had to get back around confident people. That was the best thing I did. Like I never got around somebody who stayed down or said negative things. It's almost as if I looked at those as the people that I knew I was heading in the wrong direction. Like, and you can feel that. And you get around the people that even when you're getting your butt kicked, they'll say that it's okay to have that. It's okay to suffer down here. Just keep going. And I remember I got it back, and it came back stronger. I'm just curious, you think about that? Like some people, that's all it takes is just the will to. What do you get first, right? Do you get your bravery first, your confidence first? Somebody asked me that the other day. I didn't know. I was like, well, I think you just kind of step into it empty, and bravery comes from watching somebody else do it. Or the confidence comes from watching somebody else do it. I'm still trying to figure that part out, right? But
I guess maybe trust. Like I've always trusted my voice, my inner, whatever it is, your intuition, instinct. I always listen to it. I'm not saying I always got it right, but I listen to it. But it's interesting. You say you want to be around brave people, good people. It's true. It's a constant. Why do you think I wanted to come here? It's like, I want to be on the podcast, sure, but I'm going to meet Marcus Luttrell. And for me, it was like, I'm going to be around that's how I saw it, and I'm being legit. It was more about coming here and to meet you in person. I'd read your book, watched your movie, and I'm thinking, how amazing is this opportunity? So that's why when you were like, oh, you're going to do it on Zoom. I'm like, Zoom? I'm like, hell no. I told my husband, we have a baby at home. I'm like, sweetie, I'm going to go do a podcast, Marcus Luttrell. You got the baby. He's like, you go. He's like, you tell him hello. Book my flight. I was like, I'm going to Houston.
I appreciate that.
I mean, I had to Google it. I'm like, what airport is close to? Because I don't know the towns. I'm like, I had to check like what airport's closest. I even called up Dr. Lyon. I'm like, what airport am I flying in? Texas is huge because I had no idea. But I think even to this day, I carry that. I'm brave if I'm in proximity of other brave people. I'm wise so I really always look at the circle around me, and it'll break you.
So you go into this, where Marcus was going with this, into this congresswoman's office and just blindly apply, not knowing anybody, not knowing what even you're going to do.
I had no idea what the job entailed.
Yeah.
Zero. I heard congresswoman. I'm like, that sounds like a place I need to be.
Yeah. What did they have you do when you got the job?
When I got it, I did casework. So constituents would write in and with problems, and I would help resolve those issues. You'd get everything from somebody saying, my cable bill is really high. Can you help me talk to the cable company? I would do that, and I would call up the cable company. It'd be an elderly person saying, please help me. They're not listening to me. Or it'd be somebody who was in the Navy, and I had military folks write in saying, look, I signed up. I remember one young man, he signed up. They put him in as enlisted, but he had college, so he should have gone in as an officer, but he couldn't fix that. So he was writing to us, can you please help me? And so we would work those cases. So that's what I did. And I loved it so much that when it was time for them to get a new intern, I said, can I stay? They said, you can stay, but we're not paying you. I said, that's fine. So I stayed on almost another 2 semesters because I had no exposure to anything like that in my life. And for me, I was like, where am I going to have this? My parents, although hardworking, they had no exposure to places or people like that. So this really opened my eyes to government, to public service, to maybe just getting my toe in the door. And you know what? It paid off, because even though I worked for free, and most people were like, why would you work for free? And I knew, I'm like, no, I'm investing in myself. This will pay off later in some way. So when I actually applied to go into the U.S. Secret Service later on, guess who I called? Hello, Congresswoman, remember me? I worked for you almost 2 years. Would you write me a letter? She's like, you bet I will. And I think one of the reasons I was also able to get that job in the U.S. Secret Service is because she wrote me this long letter for reference for them to hire me.
You earned that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And when you earn something like that from our people, because there are levels. Like there's equality, but there's levels. And that goes, what that boils down to is someone's word and what they kind of how people perceive them, right? So it's true, man. And your dad did that too. He's like, man, I'll work for free.
Yeah.
And it paid off.
Just to prove you're capable.
Matter of fact, somebody walks up on you and does that, but hey man, I'll just be here for free. Just let me get my in here, and then we'll go from there. That's the best way to be.
It's humble.
It's humble, and it's almost unheard of these days. I mean, everyone wants to know before they start anything how much they're going to be getting paid, and they already want to negotiate up. People very rarely are willing to work for anything less than an enormous amount of money. Like, they want to start at the top. Kids today want to start at the top and not.
I guess that's the difference between loving something and doing it for. Because money didn't matter. It's supposed to show up when you do what you love, right?
I believe that. I mean, when I applied for a U.S. Secret Service, and before that I was NYPD, I never once asked, what am I getting paid? I had no idea what I was getting paid. I didn't even know. And I remember they're like, hey, U.S. Secret Service, they have GS levels. They're like, you'll either come in for a 5 or a 7. I remember the recruiter was like, I'm trying to get you a 7 because you're NYPD. I'm seeing what I can do, but hang in there. I'm like, I don't care. I spoke 0. I was like, I don't care what I come in as long as you all hire me. And I was just happy to be there. I'm an adjunct professor, and one of the first things my students look at is what they're going to get paid. Yeah. And I think it's such a great disservice, because like you said, if you love what you do, like the money or the wealth, it's not money, the wealth. Yeah,
wealth. Yeah, that's what
that comes, right?
Yeah.
But if you're just going in it for the dollars, like what are you doing it for?
You'll always be chasing that.
Oh, well, everything you try to earn will go away when that dollar goes away. But if you go in for the wealth, there's a lot that goes into that, and we don't talk about that. It's like how people look at you and how your reputation and what you build, and you're reliable and you're trustworthy, you're courteous and all that, and people recognize that. And you see people line up for just to hear somebody, and they'll do business with somebody if they know they're like that.
Yeah.
It's like you can't even put a price on that.
Well, I think probably too, like being a former SEAL or serving in the military, you may have experienced it, because I did, just because of my association with what I did before. There's an automatic assumption of the caliber of the type of person people think I am. Oh, I can trust her. Oh, I can confide in her. Oh, this is someone who's reliable. And so it's that branding too of like just being, I think the mindset is, if she could work there or he can work at that place, that says something about who you are. And people do want to do business with you or work with you or follow you, or have people, and I don't know if you have this, people confide in me, strangers, all the time. And I'm thinking, you don't know me, but I guess I think maybe what we're connected to kind of is what builds that confidence or that trust in you.
Yeah, for sure.
That brand is how people respond to it. When you hear things, it's kind of like when somebody walks in with a doctor title. Everyone knows what that means. And you completely change the way you look at somebody when they have that title. And we do that out of what you said. You got to earn it first, and then the trust that goes along with it. And because of that, it's what's hard. It's probably harder maintaining it. That's the hardest part, is keeping it, passing it down. It's like, hey, why is this so important? I'm like, it is. Trust me, you don't know what we did in the past to get here. So much so that just by saying our name when we come in, everybody gets cool. And that's the best part. Like when you say a certain title, people just automatically relax. That's how you know you put some work in.
Yeah, we used to actually, when I was on the president's detail, when we would travel, anytime we were near water, we'd always have SEALs with us. And so that was my first exposure to SEALs. I didn't know why. And I remember asking him, like, why are we, but we worked with military a lot, but because with some assignments you guys would be there and some you wouldn't. So I remember asking why with some assignments, and like in Hawaii we would have SEALs. I remember
we're out there.
overseas. Yeah.
Imagine falling into a bed that's as cool as the other side of the pillow. Intrigued? Well, let me introduce you to Ghost Bed. I used to toss and turn all the time, overheating, but then I discovered Ghost Bed and everything changed. This family-owned company with over 20 years of experience crafts their mattresses with patented cooling technology that's simply unmatched. The reason I love Ghost Bed so much is because it solved all of my overheating issues, and that is the most comfortable mattress I have ever slept on. With over 60,000 5-star reviews, I know I'm not alone. Made in the USA and Canada, Ghost Bed mattresses are built for durability and comfort. With a 101 night sleep trial and free shipping and returns, you can try this risk-free, and most items ship within 24 hours. You really can't beat that. Are you ready to experience the coolest sleep of your life? Visit ghostbed.com/TNQ and use our code TNQ for an incredible 50% off site-wide. Trust me, your future is well rested and yourself will thank you. Don't forget, ghostbed.com/TNQ for 50% off site-wide.
Because I remember asking them too, they had their setup by there was a lake or river there, our egress route. I remember asking them, like, hey, how do you guys pick this? How do you decide? So it was always really fascinating, especially on midnight shift, because there'd always be somebody from the SEALs in our command post. And I would always sit and kind of pick their brain. I'm like, hey, I got questions for you.
Yeah.
I think they probably got annoyed with me because he's like, could you leave me alone? It's midnight. But I was always fascinated and intrigued. And there was moments where I'd have, although I was Secret Service agent, I'm thinking, wow, how did I get in a spot where I'm around these caliber of people? It was a very humbling and kind of just, fulfilling experience to have that.
So how did you get into the law enforcement role? Did you do that straight out of college?
I did it more or less out of college. When I graduated college, in college, I wasn't a typical college student. I had multiple part-time jobs because my parents couldn't afford college, so I got loans and all that. So I'd work part-time, but I also did the Congresswoman, and then I did study abroad programs. So I knew, I'm like, I need to, I don't know if I didn't really think about my resume, I guess, but I was like, I want to learn. So I lived in Europe. I lived in Italy for a while. I lived in Rome. I went to the American University of Rome. I went to school there, college. I did a semester abroad. I learned Italian. Then I came back, and then I did a semester in Mexico. I went to school there, and I learned Spanish. And then I came back, and then I did another overseas assignment. I did Morocco, where I started learning Arabic. And then I did France, and I did France and then Germany. And so I was always, my friends were in the clubs, and sometimes I would go when I was back home, but I knew, like, I need to see what's out there. So I think all those things kind of helped me without realizing they were helping my resume. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to learn. But when I finished school, I couldn't find a good job. Everything was, back then it was secretary, or admin assistant, which is a fancy word for that. And I remember thinking, like, I don't think I can do that. And I was on a subway train, and I saw a New York City police officer hanging out. And back then, they weren't really that much in shape. There's beer bellies hanging out. He's leaning on the rails. And I remember thinking, well, I can do what he does. And I could help people. And that's what I called 212 recruit. Told nobody, said nothing to no one. I knew my parents would be livid, so I said nothing. And I put in for that process. And I was like, why not? I always had that mindset, why not? And I just started passing the different phases of the NYPD. And then before you know it, I get this phone call there. It was a Friday, you start Monday. And I was like, what?
Oh my gosh.
It was Friday, you start Monday. And at that time, I'd landed like this job working for an insurance company, which AIG, sorry AIG. I mean, it was fine, but it wasn't my thing. And so I was like, well, I have to give my 2 weeks notice. I'm trying to do the right thing. They're like, the guy on the phone's like, you want the job or not? Because we'll give it to somebody else.
Total New Yorker.
Yeah. So Friday I went in, I resigned. I spent the weekend working to fix my files or the cases I had for them. And then Monday morning I was in the New York City Police Academy. Fish out of water, had no idea what I was doing. And they were about to give me a big slice of humble pie.
You can get it there, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
How long is the police academy?
It was then 8 months.
8 months.
8 months.
Wow.
It was hard.
It should be. I feel like
hard.
that police academy should be hard.
It was hard. You know what? I think because I would see officers and they kind of, I guess they don't hold the PT standards after you became an officer back then. So I'm thinking, and I heard, this is my naiveness. I heard academy. So I was like, oh, it'll be like college classes.
Yeah, no.
I really had no clue. I had no idea. No, I roll in there. And
I think they do that on purpose.
Yeah.
To confuse those that come from places where you don't get to hear about all that. It's like academy. Yeah, that sounds pretty pleasant. I think I'll go check that out.
Well, there was like over 1,000 of us. My class.
Starting out?
I think it was 1,500. And you show up and you're just standing there. And
so that place must be huge if it can house that many cadets at one time.
It was huge.
So it is a campus then?
No. Back then, the academy, it was a building. It was in downtown Manhattan on 19th Street, and it was attached to the back of the 1-3 precinct. And the thing was falling apart. In fact, we only had one stairwell because the other stairwell caved in. So we would do shift changes, and you would
That's where you want to put them right there, man.
They didn't care.
Yeah, that's where the cadets need to go.
Nobody cared. Like, it was just one stairwell, and you're like sardines doing shift change because there's day shift and night shift, and they would switch it on you. But you're looking at about 1,500 cadets split in half. So half of you are doing the shift change, and it was wild. And all these things I never thought of. I had to carry my gear in my non-shooting hand. I'd never shot any weapon. I grew up in New York City. I'm like, what's my non-shooting hand? I've never shot. Because you don't start off with weapons yet. I
don't even know what the hell that means.
I didn't know what that meant. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, I'm right-handed, so I'm probably going to shoot with my right. Maybe that's what that means. I'll hold it with my left. Because you would get written up if you held your gear bag with the wrong hand. Like little things like this, I really didn't know, and there's no one I could ask.
Oh, that's that attention to detail. That's the worst, learning that.
What year is this?
2000.
So was there a lot of women going through?
There weren't a lot, no, but there were enough, I guess, to where I didn't feel. But I have to be transparent. I never looked at it. I never thought, are there women? I just didn't. And maybe I thank my parents for that because they didn't put that in my head. Although our culture was like, get married, have a family, have babies, but I was never told, you're a woman, you can't do this. I never heard that, or you're a woman, you shouldn't do this. They were upset when I joined. They didn't talk to me the whole time I was in the academy. Gosh. Oh no, and I lived at home.
That's what needs to be on TV, is the academy. Because then your people you'll get to know your officers, which is fine, and then you get to know how tough it is, and people respect that.
I was never told that I couldn't do anything either, but there was like this assumption that women, when I was in high school, I graduated high school in 97. And at the time, because we weren't playing around on the internet or anything, that was for like teachers and stuff. I just didn't think that women were in the military. I didn't think women were in the police department because I never saw it. So it was just this really naiveness on my part. And even my friends, we've talked about it now, when we were in high school, we're like, if I would have known, I probably would have done something like that. But it just wasn't on in the movies or on TV. You never saw it. So even though I was never told like women have a place, in a certain area or not, I just didn't even think that it was an option. So it's neat that you just didn't even think twice about it and were like, oh, I can do that. And
I think maybe it had to do with the way my parents raised me in that. So because we're Greek and Greeks are very proud to be Greek.
Yeah.
But I grew up, and they also put me in a Greek private school. That was one thing that they saved to do. Like they were terrified of putting us in like public schools, rough, especially then. But we learned about like Achilles, Alexander the Great, like. So when you grew up hearing these stories, and my dad would tell us, he would sit and teach us all those stories, Greek mythology. Mm-hmm. He would say like, these are your ancestors. So maybe I think that because I grew up hearing these stories, and my dad connection was, well, this is where you come from. I saw myself that way. It didn't occur to me that maybe women didn't do it. But although we had the goddess Athena, goddess of war, she was the goddess of war, and I always heard about. I had friends named Athena, so I maybe that. But I also, though, the women in my family worked. They had to, but my grandmother, who worked very hard and had a really rough upbringing, she'd always tell me, she's like, you go out there and you work. And she would say this, and I don't know if it's going to come out right in English, but she'd say that gold bracelet that you buy it for yourself, because she couldn't afford jewelry. She's like, you buy your own gold bracelet, like you buy your own gold. No one buys it for you. So I had that, so perhaps, but I also thought, like, why not me?
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's one thing we don't have here in America, is to go that far back in history, to where you guys can trace that. We can't do that. Like you go back a couple hundred years after ours, you get into a different country, and we don't, for whatever reason, we don't follow it because we started something new, right? So that's a powerful thing, though, especially if you know your lineage. Like we had to do 23andMe just to find out how far back.
Where are you from? I did it
a couple hundred years ago.
He's from like Norway and
Slovakia, or just drew a blank.
He's Nordic. He's like a Viking.
Yeah.
No surprise there. No surprise there.
Slav, right?
No, it was like all Norway and Finland or whatever.
I'm from over there.
Yeah, it was very Nordic. I've been there, like all that
I'm
area.
White dude. Okay? Yeah. Straight up freaking white dude. If y'all want to know what one looks like, I'm right here.
And mine is, I think, like 60-something% French.
Oh, wow.
But I knew that because my family went to Louisiana. They went to New France. They didn't go to America. They were going in the 1700s from France to New France. So I knew that mine was mostly French. A little bit of like England. It was all Europe area, but no Greek. You don't have any Greek either.
No.
You don't need it. You're good. Viking's pretty good.
I love the Greeks. I can't wait to go there.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you.
I think that's why, because I don't have any in me. I like hanging out with y'all.
We don't have any Italian, but we love Italy so much. We've probably gone 7 or 8 times together.
I'm the unofficial Texas. We're the Texas ambassadors now. We've coined that phrase.
Emotional connection there.
Big fan.
I love Italy. Yeah. When I went to school there, in fact, like they had a saying, "Una faccia, una razza," because Greeks and Italians are neighbors, and it was one face, one race. So whenever you tell them, I'm Greek, sono greca, una faccia, una razza. Italians are amazing, But I will say this, although I am, my ancestry is from, overseas. Everything I was able to do happened here. And there's no question in my mind, had I been born in Greece, and I say this with all humility, there's no way I would have been a Secret Service agent. There's no way I would have ever even been a cop. No way. This coming here, this country's afforded me so many things. To know no one, to have no connections, to know nothing, to have no money, and to be able to do the things I was able to do, I know, and my father would say it unequivocally, only here. In Greece, just to be a police officer, because there they have a national police force, you had to know somebody who knew somebody to get you in to even take the test. Forget about even being a woman. Forget that. Yeah. And in fact, in 2004, I remember I was sent over to help secure the Olympics because they were really concerned. The Olympic Games were right after 9/11. There was really a massive concern about terrorism, and so the U.S. really lent its intel and a lot of us out that way.
People don't realize how much we do that.
Yeah,
we do. We support many countries.
That's kind of what we do, actually. As Americans, everyone's like, why are we always fighting everybody and doing all that? Because we're made up of everybody. We're from everywhere. America's a place we all kind of showed up from everywhere else, try and do something. And you can be anything. That's the best part. You truly can. That does exist here. Now, is it hard? Absolutely. Depends on what you want to do. But you can, if you can think about it, we do it here in America. Sometimes to our own demise.
When I hear it's hard, I always think go somewhere else and go see if you can do it. Because there's no way a door would have ever opened for me had I been in my own home country. like where my parents were born and raised. I say this unequivocally. I know this for a fact.
And that's so powerful, because the whole reason you are how you are is because your parents raised you on your ancestry. And I mean, even dating back to Alex, just the stories. But even in your own country, you couldn't get there. You couldn't get to where you were. So it's really powerful. So let's take you back to New York City police. That's right before 9/11.
It was. Everybody hated cops back then, so we're pretty much...
Was that where we were at then, too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's full circle now.
Yeah.
Oh, they hated cops. We would run on the FDR. They would run us sometimes outdoors because there was nowhere to run. It's New York City. It's big concrete. But at the time, because of where the academy was, you'd run in the streets and you had these horrible uniforms on. Like, they were made out of, like, I swear, like canvas shorts. But people knew you were with the police department. They'd spit on you. They'd flip you the finger.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember I was confused. I remember thinking, I'm like, why? I mean, why do you hate police so much? But that was the tone back then. After 9/11, the tone changed significantly. It was very much supportive of first responders.
You have something to focus on.
But prior to 9/11, no, it was. I remember actually when you're in the police academy, you wear a gray shirt. You don't. New York City cops wear blue shirts, but in the police academy, you wear a gray shirt, and so you had to wear your gray shirt going to the academy and leaving. And so I took the subway. I started taking the subway, and I started, like, people would like shove you or push you, or a couple of cadets had gotten beat up on the subway because they knew you were in the academy. And so after like a week or 2 weeks of doing that, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to end up dead somewhere. And I started carpooling with friends because I was you risk really getting hurt on the subway system.
Wow.
Because they knew.
My gosh.
Yeah.
So when you graduated the academy, were you just doing like traffic, or what was your
I never got
job?
to graduate the academy because I went straight into the U.S. Secret Service.
Oh.
I never
You
even
got
got
picked
to
up
finish.
in the academy?
Oh
I got picked up in the academy.
That's
So
so cool.
I wanted to graduate, and I remember asking the Secret Service because I was shy, not that much. I said, "Would you just let me stay and finish?" Because I was in a holding pattern anyway to go to training for the Secret Service. Like the academy opened.
Oh, they do that in our program. We've had guys in the middle of training that got snatched out to go to do university.
What's the criteria for that? What are they looking
Service?
for the Secret Service to want you when you're in the
I had
academy?
applied.
Okay.
I had applied. So while I got into the New York City Police Academy, I was just like, I could do, who else is out there? And I bought a book after I graduated college. It was called International Careers. And because I love the world and languages, I will never forget it. I bought this book, and it was careers in different parts of the world. And so I was like, someone will hire me. And I wrote, that summer I spent writing cover letters and resumes. And it's not like you can do it now. I mean, it was a little slower back then. And I would send it out to every organization in this book. U.S. Secret Service happened to be in the book. FBI happened to be in the book. So government agencies were in there. So I thought, how cool. I'm like, I'll apply to these guys too. And then NYPD kind of came a little bit after. So it's weird. In two completely different ways, law enforcement paths came, although I was never actively seeking them. So after I got into the NYPD, U.S. Secret Service is like, hey, come take a test. Oh, you passed it. Come take this test. Oh, you passed it. Come take your polygraph. Oh, you passed it, which I was shocked. I was like, for sure I failed that thing. I
think people just get so nervous when that even comes up.
Well, Marcus.
Because of all the movies we've seen and you know how it gets in people's psyches. They just can't, that's funny to me now.
I became a polygraph examiner.
Are you kidding me?
Yes, I'm a polygrapher. Well, I was. Technically now I'm not.
What's it called?
Polygrapher. Polygrapher. Greek word.
No, we got to
Greek
go with
word.
something different.
Polygrapher, yes. But it's actually Greek word. Poly means a lot, and grapho
Have you ever seen
means
Meet
writing.
the Parents?
Oh my God.
Yes.
The movie Meet the, of course, yeah, I'm sorry. I know y'all watch as much TV and movies as we do and y'all are stuff like that. Dude, when he hooks him up to that old school.
That's old school.
Oh.
Today it's done on a software. It's a computer system
Computers,
now.
right? Yeah.
It's a computer system. I mean, it's.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's funny.
No,
I love that because a lot of people, everybody has to go through that. It's funny.
My husband's one too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Dinners at home, our house are great.
That is hilarious.
Our daughter's screwed.
Yeah.
That's what I was just thinking about. I was like, well, that's just great.
Yeah.
Wait till
Sit down.
Yeah, hun, have a seat.
Let me feel your pulse. So where were you last night?
What's going on? And then dad's over there giving you the look, right? So then it's good cop, bad cop, but then how are you going to even beat that?
To follow your daughter.
Well, man.
Let me put on these pneumograph tubes. Just hold on. What's your EDA?
Poor
EDA is
thing.
you actually check to see how much somebody's sweating. Electrodermal activity. So when we go into, look, the polygraph, the way it's designed ultimately is based off of fight or flight or freeze. So when you're caught up in
Which is a nervous system that's stitched into our body.
autonomic, you can't control it.
Can't control it.
Nope. And it goes into autopilot. So whenever you feel threatened in any way, like, and I know, Marcus, you've had many experiences, like it's your body arming you for whatever threat's coming your way.
So that's a great point.
Do you think
that's a great point to teach that too, because if they don't know, I'm sorry, but if they don't know that that's happening,
they're afraid of it.
They're afraid of it.
They think it's anxiety attacks or panic attacks, and it's like, no. And I feel like we teach people the wrong things. We teach them to fear
right,
anxiety. Yeah. Anxiety is bad. No, it's your body telling you something's going on here. I'm uncomfortable. I'm here to help you. But we're in this space where we tell people, oh, feeling anxious, it's a problem. Oh, you're feeling it.
They'll drug it. That's the worst.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I feel like there's, for a polygraph, I've never taken one, but I would think
I've got one, Marcus. You want me to bring it next time I come?
I was going to say, yeah, we're in one right now.
Well, I would think that a lot of people have fear just on a question, even if they did or did not do something, like that question just triggers fear. Does that ever happen?
Yes. So here's the thing. If somebody's nervous, they're nervous for the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So you calibrate it for that. I know you're going to be nervous, number one. Number two, before you actually hook somebody up to a polygraph, you have a conversation with them. So you probably talk to them for about 2 hours. So for about 2 hours, you and I are going to speak. Okay, I'm going to ask you these questions. Have you ever done this? When I say this, this is what I mean. And usually really like this is the polygraph, because sometimes we would get pre-test confessions, which means I don't even have to hook up the person to the box.
Absolutely.
But because we're in sync and in harmony, we've got good rapport. Like we're in a place where you feel trust, because it plays a big role. Then you start revealing things, and I'm like, I don't even need to polygraph her. She's already revealing things that I need. That's really the crux of it. But by the time I hook you up, you and I have talked about everything. Hey, if I'm asking you if you ever committed a crime, this is what I mean. So by then, you've told me whatever bad thing you think you've done. So when I hook you up, it's like, all right, other than what you've already told me, is there anything else that you have done? So at that point, you've already told me everything. So you're like, no. Yeah. So there's a way it's designed, but you don't take a person, sit them down, hook them up, and then let them go. That's a sure way to have somebody fail.
Yeah, the shields will go up immediately.
That's how I picture it. It's like someone just walks into a room and they're like,
I got rolled up by a guy the first time with me. He was such a great conversationalist. Those are the ones you want. Like if they can just sit down and have a conversation. It was before I went.
Oh.
Like this guy was an interrogator.
Oh. Gosh.
What did you take it for?
Just being in the teams. Like we get waterboarded and do all that.
So did it make you take polys to be in the teams?
To certain sections of the teams, you have to go do that.
For clearances?
Like training.
Yeah, training.
Just
for training purposes, all stuff like that. Waterboarding. We do that to ourselves for fun, actually. It gets a little weird in teams. I know you know what I'm talking.
I've not experienced it, thankfully.
Yeah.
But
y'all had to do all kinds of weird things to each other.
yeah, and we would do it just like if we did it to the enemy, they wouldn't do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
The team guys take it as far off the grid as it's amazing to be.
They even gave each other catheters.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't going to bring that up, but I said team guys get weird. That's why I'm going to leave it right at that.
I'm just giving you an example of like how weird.
You got to understand, like the minute y'all bring something up, a team guy will immediately figure out how to
tell me.
You know, the catheter to pee out of a tube or whatever. They had to give each other catheters for trust. Like
pee in my tube?
No, like put the tube in.
Oh.
Yeah, to actually insert the catheter.
So we have to do IVs on each other and all the procedures just to make sure that
you could do.
You can do it.
That makes sense, though.
Isn't that crazy?
I know it sounds crazy, but then a lot of the training that we have to go through is because of that. Like not only do you do it, then it teaches you, well, if someone's going to have to do it to me, I better be... I'm kind of gentle.
Yeah.
Yes. You know
what I mean? That's where that comes from. They're like, hey, look, if you're going to have to reciprocate this, I'm going to be as gentle as humanly possible. And
That makes sense.
It does, right?
Weird.
And you're
Yes.
talking about the most alpha, you know what our crew's made out of. So you're trying to deal with them and give them, some of our guys just don't have patience. They just don't have that. That's why they're not doctors. That's why they don't do medicine. And like, there's some things they just don't do. It's like we were talking about, you got with the interrogators, if you have a guy that can just tell, like whatever he says is funny, like when he's around, you're genuinely happy. Like you can't help it. It's just whenever he comes in the room, like we have those, and girls, they make the best interrogators because you just want to talk to them. And then you just want to tell them your problems because that eventually comes out, right?
Yeah.
And it's the funniest thing.
You know, you're right. It's actually, there's a term for it. You're correct. There's a term, and there's research done on it. 2 researchers, Susan Fisk, Chris Malone. And what they did is they looked at the most successful people in the world, and they were trying to figure out what are the 2 qualities that the most successful people have that draw people to them and make people want to talk to them. And do you know what they are? Of all the things out there, warmth and competence. And those 2 qualities, which is what you're actually talking about, those are the 2 things that draw people to you. That's what gets them to open up. You're warm, I'm open, I'm welcoming, I'm approachable, come talk to me, you can tell me anything, no judgment on my face. You did what? You murdered somebody? Because I did polygraphs. Talk to me, tell me about that.
Sure.
And then competence is your skill set, your ability, you're capable. I'm a competent person. I show up when I say I'm going to show up. I do what I say I'm going to do. So you are absolutely right. Those 2 qualities are what people embody that draw people to them. And then that's when people talk and they give information. That's how I got information. I couldn't waterboard anybody.
Sure.
I wasn't allowed. But I had to do it by the letter of the law. And not just here in the U.S., but even when I went overseas, I had to do it in this way. And I would do it on terrorists or terrorist sympathizers when I needed intelligence. That was I was not allowed to harm or touch anybody.
This Military Appreciation Month, we salute all the military members and their families. Your dedication and sacrifices inspire all of us every single day. In May, Navy Federal Credit Union honors you with exclusive benefits and offers. Enjoy special rates and discounts. Plus, join Navy Federal and get $50 when you open a credit card. You can visit NavyFederal.org/celebrate for all the fantastic offers. And with 24/7 support and resources like Best Cities After Service and Best Careers for Military Spouses, Navy Federal supports your journey through every step of the way. Join Navy Federal Credit Union this Military Appreciation Month. Thank you for your service. Visit NavyFederal.org today. Navy Federal is insured by the NCUA, equal housing lender. You must join and open a membership savings account between May 1st and May 31st with a $5 minimum balance required to open and maintain the account and obtain the bonus. Visit NavyFederal.org for full terms and conditions.
Right. When they say communicate, they're like, hey, do you speak the language? I'm like, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm talking about when you come in there, can you talk to them about what they like? It's almost like if racers, you talk to them about racing. You know, you open them up with something that they love, right? And if you speak that language, like if people who work out in the gym, do you work out in the gym? Well, then you obviously can speak the language. Mm-hmm. You know what sets are, reps are, what the metal means, and all that. And a lot of people don't even speak that language. And it's that ability. It's like when you say, man, do they speak multiple languages? Yeah, and multiple tongues, which means they can speak slang in that language.
Well, so that's finding common ground. We like people.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
we like people. Everything you're saying is actually scientific. So we like people who remind us of us. Mm. And so when you find common ground, when you have someone that they don't know you and you're trying to find that common ground, a simple conversation about working out, the gym, or racing, or whatever it is. Oh, I see a little bit of me in you. Yeah. You and I have something in common.
We advertise it. Mm-hmm. Shirts we wear.
Yes.
All the way we walk, we communicate, the hats, stuff like that. But you can tell when somebody steps out of the car, right? They want you to know what how they're feeling a lot of times. And the best is when they advertise it with words on their shirts. Man, like, you know, he's got a Dale Earnhardt, he must be a race fan. And I know exactly what kind of race fan he is.
Are you a race fan?
I am. I enjoy everything America.
Marcus likes everything.
I feel if you fall in love with America... Yeah. With America, I know individually we can be upsetting and we can be angry and we can do all kinds of crazy things, right? But as a people, if you fall in love with our people and they know that, I mean, it's look
he
what we do.
Can literally fit into any kind of category of person, no matter if they're a football fan, a basketball, whatever it is. He knows a little bit about everything. So
specialists, that's what SEALs are. that's what we were trained to be, a specialist. So it's kind of like going into an environment. As soon as you walk in there, people will know that you don't belong. Like look at me. Underneath here, it's all paint. So I know if I walk into some houses, I better cover up, just because of how it makes people feel. Yeah. And then, we do that to ourselves. Sometimes we'll train for something. Man, you didn't have any idea what you were training for. What's coming now is what you're getting ready for. All that back training, which you know exactly what I'm talking about. You ran the same line I did. It don't make any difference between what we are.
Yeah.
It's what you had to strap on, that weight all these years. That's what's coming for you.
Okay, I want to hear about 9/11 with you. So you were with the Secret Service at that time. What was that like?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, we the 7 World Trade Center, which is 48 stories. If you look at old pictures, you'll see the towers, and right next to the towers were 7. They were all connected. It was like a whole big, and then you had World Trade Center 5 and 6, which were smaller, but it was like a whole complex. Our offices were in World Trade Center 7. So I'd gone to work that morning. I was chasing somebody who was committing fraud. And so I was working with our customs guy to help me kind of tag the guy so that way when he crossed the border, I could grab him. There was ways you could do that if you're looking for someone and once they cross into the U.S., they're in an airport, you get pinged, they grab the person and it's like, hey, we got your guy, come find him. So I was trying to set that up. So I gone in early and that's when I heard the first explosion. Now, I have to tell you.
You could hear that?
Oh, it sounded like somebody took a massive dumpster truck and like held it up in the sky and then just dropped it. And then just all that steel and the clanking and the clattering. That's what I heard. And then I looked out the window and I saw the tower on fire and it was right side by side to our building. I didn't know though. I really thought, I'm like, it must be an electrical fire. What happened? I would have never.
Sure. Why would you even think that?
No, but everything was on fire up top. So the first plane hit pretty high up.
Yeah. And
then we went to go give help. So you automatically knew, all right, we have to help. So the few of us that were in the office, there weren't a lot of us, we got our kits, our medical kits, and we went down to the lobby and we went to cross over to go into the tower, the first tower. And
the street level, or you'll go underground?
No, we were on street level.
Street level, yeah.
But the problem is it's weird. It doesn't show, the videos don't do it justice. Chunks of steel and debris were falling off the facade of the tower. So like you couldn't even get out the front because it was like.
It was raining that stuff down.
It was raining and it was crashing onto the concrete in front of us. So we go out the side doors and we're trying to go around and trying to avoid getting crushed. And as we're going out the side, I didn't see it. I heard it. And my colleague, I just remember grabs me literally by my collar and then throws me up against the wall. And you just heard this massive explosion. It was the second plane coming. And it was weird because we're running this way. And the second plane's coming from this way. So the second plane shot through the tower as we're right here. And so all that stuff came raining down on us. And it was, honestly, it was hit or miss. You either got hit or there was no, what was interesting? There was no injuries that day. You either lived or you died. Because if something was going to hit you, the magnitude and weight of that steel from those towers or even from a plane, you were just done. And so I remember just seeing steel hit. I remember one guy getting hit by steel and that was it. He was gone. And as we were bolting, and it was sad in that you're watching this happen and you can't help because it's so fast. So that's what people don't talk about, is that how time shifts. Like there's a reality shift, a complete reality shift that you can't even fathom what that feels like until that event shows up. Did you experience that, like time slowing down on you?
No, not when y'all had to go through it. It was something else that happened to me.
Yeah, but that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, absolutely, it happens. When those realities shift and you don't even know what those feel like, that's when you're talking, I can see your eyes shift when you talk about that. Like that's how you know, because there's sounds and smells that only exist in those arenas that you can't replicate. But you know what I'm talking about, that freaking odor, right? That when death's around, when she shows up, man, woo! Especially if she's working, everything's dying. You know it. It's like an aggravation, like almost a musk that comes with that.
Yeah, that's true. There's certain scents, like today, like if I catch a whiff of something, it'll remind me of that sounds. But it's interesting because I never experienced it. I had heard it through movies that time slows things down, and it did. Like this whole, like everything, it was like a movie, and everything goes from playing at normal speed to just like drawing down, and then everything slows down, and you're thinking, and it's amazing. I guess it's the brain, and I know nothing about this, but I guess the brain speeds up, which makes time seem slower, and so you're able to move and do things. And I was able to move and shift and grab and do, and this really hit me when the first tower fell, because I was out in the open.
I was going to ask you where you were when that stuff happened, because that's when it got interesting.
You know, we set, so after the second plane hit, our path was blocked. We couldn't get into the towers through the normal way. And I went around with a colleague of mine. We actually ended up making an arrest, believe it or not. There was some guy, he was standing by Vesey Street, and he was standing there by the side of the building looking up at the tower, saying out loud, "Oh, they missed. I didn't see him, but NYPD cops came over and they saw all I had on me was my shield and my gun. Everything else was in the building. And they're like, "Hey man, we don't know what to do. Come listen to this guy." Because terrorism was a new thing.
Yeah, I remember.
But up until then, all you did in the United States was crime. NYPD, that's all they focused on. Mm-hmm. Nobody thought about terrorism. So it's like, what do we do with this guy? So we pulled him to the side, and we're asking, "What are you doing here?" And then we realized it's raining debris. We're going to die having a conversation because we're trying to follow this guy's constitutional rights by not putting him in custody, but we're all going to die. So we pulled him to the side, and I said, "Look, we're going to take you with us. Do you have anything on you?" And we searched him, and he had like razor blades or something on him, but I found like some paperwork. He had just come out of some court, and he actually his name was Greek. So I started talking to him in Greek. I said, "What are you doing here?" And you could see something was off. So I said, "Look, I don't know what this is. Just take him." And we put him in the RMP police car, and they took him. Remember the cop? He looked at us, and he's like, "Aren't you coming with us?" And I said, "No, we should stay." And he hugged me. It was before the tower fell. Like he knew. He's like, "Just be safe." And they drove off. But then we set up, we hustled over and we set up a triage by West Side Highway. And it was right by, you know, it was the towers and then the west side, and then us on the corner. And debris just started raining down. It was just, there's no words to, it was not organized. It was chaos. Everybody was just running all over the place. Nobody knew what to do. There was no organized effort. And we were just, as people were, we couldn't get in. So as people were coming out, we were just pulling them. And there was two things happening. One, you either had people who were just in shock. I mean, I saw somebody walking their dog.
Yeah.
Like, I was just kind of like I remember grabbing them and I'm like, "You need to leave." And they were just, you could see like it was not computing what was going on. But then some people were coming out, they're covered in dust and debris. You could see clearly they're in shock, like their F3, their autonomic nervous system's kicked in and they're not comprehending what's happening. So we wanted to get them out of the way because honestly, they were a danger to themselves, a danger to us. Just leave the area. We didn't want them to get hurt. And then we had other people coming out that maybe did need aid. So there were ambulances or buses lined up, and we were trying to figure out who should go in the buses. So we'd load them in, send them on their way, and then who we could treat. Yeah. And that's what we were doing. But that's when the tower fell. And so I remember, this is where training.
What was interesting then is when when it came down.
Mm-hmm.
Were you watching it?
Oh, of course.
Oh yeah, I was.
Absolutely. I just checked in one of the commands, and we were all sitting. I'd just gotten there when the first plane hit, because when we walked in the building, everyone thought it was what they used to have, like a Cessna flew in there or something. Just
in Florida or California?
I was in Florida, and I was standing there looking at that plane when that second one rolled in, though. And then I'll never forget, my master chief poked his head in the door. He's like, "Get ready, boys. We're going to war." That's exactly what he said to me.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. And then everything changed.
It did.
And then we were glued to the TVs watching y'all go through that. And I'll never forget when that sucker came down, the inside there, how y'all, that part, when y'all got covered in that ash.
I gotta tell you,
God,
we're lucky it fell the way it did. Despite all that, like I would have never thought it would fall the way it fell, which in some ways it was good. But debris went out, blocks out. I mean, I think I remember there was an engine found, part of an engine found on the top of one of the skyscrapers, a few blocks out, and there was. It was everywhere, but it was, it was like an earthquake. It was unlike anything. It was just wild.
It was wild time out there, man.
So I ended up, I was thinking about that catheter story you're saying, because the more you train, the better you'll be in stressful situations. And despite my training, I felt the stress, and there was somebody I was trying to get oxygen for. I had an oxygen tank, and I was kind of fumbling with it a bit. I'm like, man, I trained with this. Why can't I get the tubes in right to give this person oxygen? So I remember kneeling down, doing this, and it just went quiet. And I looked around. I'm like, where did everyone go? All my colleagues were gone. Everyone was gone. And then I just heard like this echo, reminded me of a hull of a ship. That banging or that sound that comes from the steel underneath the ship? It sounded like that, but coming from above. And that's when I'm like, something's going to happen. But my initial thought was the roof is sliding off from that first plane. I thought, all right, maybe the ledge of the roof is sliding off because all that debris kept coming down. So for me, that's when time slowed down. Like it all went just to super, like just slow. And I'm like, all right, what do I need? Training kicks in. Okay, well, this thing's going to come down. If I need shelter, and there was nowhere to go. So it was just a brick side of a wall. So I kind of was like, I'll hold here. And I was like, well, I need water. If I get buried alive, I need water. Which for me, I was like, I'd rather die, to be quite honest. I was like, I don't want to get buried underneath this thing, because I knew, I was like, no one's going to find me. I was like, I need water. And then I needed glass can kill you from the blast. So even if like I don't get crushed with the steel, because I didn't know how the building was going to fall apart, I was like, I need something to shield me from the glass, because the towers were all glass. So there was like these tables there, because it was a square where people would eat. And I dragged this metal table, and this thing was heavy. These were tables that were not meant to be moved, but your adrenaline kicks in. And I pulled it over, and I sat underneath it. This is like, it's silly, right? And I pulled my knees under my chest, because I'm thinking I'm going to make myself as small as possible, so that the debris doesn't fall on my legs and cut my legs off. Meanwhile, like a table could shield me like that. But these are the things you think of, like, well, I'm going to do them. But in all that time, everything slowed down. And I sat there by myself, and I was thinking, and I started hearing it come down. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to die. I'm like, I'm going to die. And I was okay. I was okay with it. I was sad because I was like, this is the thing I thought. I was like, I'm going to die alone. That's what I thought. That was the saddest part. I was like, oh, I'm going to die all by myself here, like completely alone. And that part made me sad. And then, I don't go to church every Sunday, but I was like, I had this moment. I'm like, I'm not going to die alone. And I started praying. And that's where my heart and my mind went to. I'm like, I'm not going to die alone. And so I sat there and I started praying, and I was like, all right, intuitively, like what you know to do. And I prayed. I was like, God, because that's I'm Greek Orthodox Christian. I was like, God, just wherever I'm going, just be with me, take me with you. And I just sat there, and I waited. And I got lucky. Nothing, like literally nothing fell on me. Like that was what spared me. That day was just if it was either luck or it's just where you stood and where you I just happened to be at a place where the debris shot over my head. And so it just a few feet over.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
In Texas, kids are taught to do that when a tornado is coming, to get underneath the desk and curl up into a ball. That's our tornado drills.
Is it?
That's what made me think of it when you were getting underneath the tables, as children, we do these drills and we just crawl up under a ball underneath the table, and that's what's supposed to protect us from a tornado. But
and people ask how do you do that in certain situations? Like, we're trained for it. It kicks in.
Your training kicks in. I thank training when they make you do. I mean, I thank it then, because when you're in training, and when you were talking to me about the NYPD, Marcus, I was not a mess, but first week I was so upset. Everyone's yelling at you, screaming at you. I had no military background. I didn't know anything. I didn't know it was a game. I'm like, why are they yelling at me? I just want to help people. I almost quit. And then there was a friend of mine who was a wrestler, and he knew better. He's like, it's a game. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm quitting. I just want to help folks. They don't want me here. And he's like, it's a game. He's like, just be patient, stick it out.
Just imagine how they're going to treat you on the street.
That's what they said.
I mean, you think the academy, they got rules in there. However they're treating you in the academy is completely probably what you needed. That's how the Almighty works.
They do, because they would tell you, and one of the things that you would get cut on is your temperament. Temperament, yes.
Whoever loses the fight, lose that cool, right? I took me forever to figure that out in the way we were trained, and a lot of times you don't know what that means. I'm like, hey, just, be cool. When you hear that, it's like it's the first person you can feel their breath come up. You can feel somebody get nervous. You can tell immediately when they're getting jazzed, when they're getting razzed. And the first person to lose their cool, lose their breath, right? So in any situation, you're like, hey man, that's how conversations are had too. It's like that, the easier the better. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. We've had that saying in the teens forever. That's what that means.
Say it again?
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yeah.
It's like in any kind of gun battle, or when you're trying to communicate something, whether you're driving or something like that, it's those people who speed up and talk fast, or just talk like this, and you can slow the situation down by doing you actually have the power to slow the situation down. Now, granted, as well as I do, there's some situations that are escalated so high, it doesn't matter what happens when you go in there, you're going in to fight. And then there's the ones where you get sent in because of who you are to de-escalate whatever's in there, that magnetism and the way you communicate it throttles people back. And then that's a proven fact. That's
your temperament. Did they make you all, and because I apologize, this is my ignorance, I don't know. Did you all have to take psych exams or anything like that? Did they make you take one?
I almost didn't make it through that day. That 3-day psychological exam was like a phone book.
It's like 500 questions.
Girl, yes.
And they ask you the same question 10 times in different ways.
Different ways.
Do you want to die, or do you love your mother? Like some random...
And towards the end of the question, you're all like, yes, I want to, because I'm tired of taking this damn test. I remember that thing.
Okay, so you had to take...
Yes, ma'am, we had to take it.
Do you know, I found out later...
For sure.
It's to see if you have, because I took one for the NYPD too, hours and hours long. It's to see if you have any, to measure your temperament, but to see if you have certain disorders, narcissism, anger issues. They wanted to see where you were. I don't remember one question I answered, because they actually called me and they're like, hey, we want to talk to you about your test.
Oh my God.
I'm thinking, what question did I hit? I didn't know. And I guess there was one question that said, are you afraid to die? Yeah. And I said, no. So apparently that was a red flag question for them. Like, oh, this woman's not afraid to die. He's like, you said this here. Can you explain why you said that? Oh. I said, well, I'm going to be a police officer, so I assume it's dangerous. So I shouldn't be afraid to die. He's like, oh, okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Make sure you're not suicidal or something.
Yeah. All right, that's interesting.
Yeah, I remember that thing.
I am joking about that thing because the whole 9/11, like that, even me. I mean, I did not know Marcus at that time. I didn't know anyone in the military. I was just, how old was I? 22 years old, single mom, and terrified. But I could not get my eyes off of the news, and I just watched for weeks, it felt like. When you were underneath that table, what was going home like for you that day? I mean, you don't just get on a subway that night and go home. How was that? What was that like?
Well, I wasn't going to leave. I guess in my head, I was like, we don't leave. So I got myself out. It took a bit because it was it turned to night. And we were trying to figure out what was what. And, there was people bleeding and there's just certain things going on. I couldn't see because I had all the stuff on my face. It burned because it gets all the asbestos and all the chemicals. Mm-hmm. It just made everything into powder. So I ingested all of it. So I remember going into the lobby of a nearby building. One of my colleagues actually found me, and he grabbed me. He's like, hey, I was like, I remember hauling out. I'm like, I can't see. And he's like, I got you. Because I couldn't see. I couldn't open my eyes. So he got me, and we went to a building, and there was a super there. He cleared my eyes. And then we were like, all right, I guess that we still didn't understand what happened. Like, we think the building fell because you didn't know.
Gosh.
So there's another building. So we were telling everybody evacuate, because when they were collapsing, they were also collapsing on the nearby buildings. So all the debris was scraping all the nearby buildings. In fact, afterward, they had to tear some of the buildings down because they were so structurally damaged.
Yeah, didn't 7 come down?
7 came down. So our office came down at the end, like it was 4 or 5 in the afternoon, because it was burning. Because when one of the towers collapsed, the debris fell onto 7. 7 caught fire. It burned all day, and then it collapsed. So we got more people away. We got people to safety, and then we later regrouped. You know, the second tower fell, so that was another, like, everybody was running from the chaos. And then everyone thought gas lines had blown. And so everybody began, like, this mass evacuation, like the fire department, they were running the sirens, the trucks. Everybody was stampeding. All the first responders were stampeding away from ground zero. They're like, gas leak, everybody run, because everybody, we thought ground zero was going to blow up.
Oh my gosh.
So we regrouped. I found some other agents by the pier. You know,
did you go all the way to the water? Is that what happened?
Yeah. I'll tell you this, and I've not spoken about it. We didn't go back. And I thought they were going to regroup us, the supervisors that we had there, and take us back. And they didn't. And I remember, I was young, but I was like, why aren't we going back? I was bothered by it. To this day, it bothers me, because I felt like they took me to hospital afterward by boat. I crossed into Jersey. They made me go to a hospital. And I was actually pretty upset about it. I was like, I feel fine. I don't want to go to a hospital. That bothered me, because they began to evacuate us. And I was like, why are we leaving? To this day, it just never sat right. But I didn't know enough to go back there by myself. I didn't know what to do. You know, I was with my team, right? My squad, my people. Where I'm supposed to be.
And if you got a chance to patch up the supervisors first, you do that, because that's how leadership works, and everything runs down from that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that chaos, don't let that eat on you, sister.
But you
can beat yourself up about that all day long. We've been don't let that eat at you.
But you do get to see what people are made of. Like, you would probably see it all the time, what the people you worked with were made of. Like, those situations they show you who people really are. Like, even training won't reveal that until you're, like, really in it, and you see who does what and who's capable of what.
Yeah. Even just everyday people, like the boat drivers that were just
That's how you
volunteering
see it. That's where you
to
see
take
that.
people across and all of that, just from afar, from being over here in Texas and watching it on the news. It was so neat to see how all of the people of New York and New Jersey and all around, I mean, Philadelphia, everywhere, people came in to just help and do whatever they could in their expertise to help.
Everybody came.
The boats was one of the coolest things, to see all of them just start shuttling people to New Jersey.
They did.
The best comes out in everybody when we all get hit at the same time.
Yes. It's sad that something tragic has to happen to unite people.
Humanity. That's how we learn all of us are good in some capacity. Because when those towers came down and the firefighters went in there and everyone, they all started dying trying to get people, everyone saw that. And that immediately gets rid of stupid, petty arguments, and everything goes out the window. I mean,
we see that here with floods. When
our
big
hurricanes
floods happen and people get trapped in their homes, and the whole state comes together and just helps people. It's neat to see that.
Do you know my first trip after 9/11? My first trip ever on a plane after 9/11, I was sent to Texas, probably to go to Waco for Cheney. VP training used to go hunting here, so I can't remember which one it was. It all starts to melt together sometimes. But I remember getting out of, I think it was Dallas. I want to say I got out of Dallas airport, and it was myself and the other agents, and we were all New Yorkers. We come out, and there were all these, I won't forget this, all these American flags that they put everywhere. And it was kind of cool, because I remember thinking, oh, wow, Texas love.
Oh, when we find out the president or vice president is coming, we
do things big here, bigger around there.
I mean, line up on the side of the highways and just wave.
Yeah. And I think that was also partly because of September 11th, because it was like not too long after. And I was like, man,
Texas took that personal.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, we didn't have that in New York, but you come out of the airport, there were just American flags everywhere.
Oh, yeah. When 9/11 hit, boy, that rogered up our freaking patriotism quick. We're down here in the South, but we're kind of, we still keep a lookout on y'all and see what y'all are doing every single day, man.
They do with the SEALs with Huall. So after that happened, I had my ordeal. But what happens with Huall then? Did they deploy right away? How did they go about that?
Absolutely, we're the first ones in. We have guys that were meandering about all around that area, and then probably a couple of weeks later, I would imagine
there were
guys
certain teams that went.
The recon boys that went in and just said the first guys in. Of course, we're with y'all too. I mean, it was a hodgepodge. That was our war. We're GWATs. We got hit right when we became. I don't want to say of age. We were in our early 20s when all of us when we started getting our wars.
Marcus was in training, in medical training as special. He was actually at 18 Delta, which is a branch of the Army, and the SEALs sent him there.
I'm kind of a bastard, man. I'm trained up by everybody.
Yeah, so at that time, during 9/11, you were at the hospital rotations, weren't you?
No, I was down doing something else in Florida.
Oh, okay. But you didn't go back to get your Trident until 2000, 2001.
Red Knight 1, yeah.
Yeah. So he wasn't immediately deployed at that year.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember when that happened, because everybody, when that happened to New York, we were all like, let's go. I just want to kick somebody's ass. That's all we thought about. And because that's what we're designed for. So when something comes down, every single team guy's chomping at the bit to get out the door. I mean, every single one of us. And we're not designed for every one of us to go out the door. That's how we were made up. But then I think 9/11 recreated from the start a different kind of America. Because look what happened to us. The FBI, the Agent Secret Service, you had everybody from gunfighters to the analysts all having to work together at the same time. So eventually those people have to merge into one human.
If you're looking for clothes that are both incredibly comfortable and effortlessly stylish, you've got to go check out Mack Weldon. Guys tend to think that looking sharp means starchy Oxfords and stiff chinos, rather than just being comfortable. But it is possible to have it both ways. So I took a family vacation and packed multiple pairs of the Mack Weldon t-shirts and so many pairs of the breathable air knit underwear. Why? Because they are literally perfect for everything. From working out to dining out, their performance fabrics feel amazing and they look and feel so good. And the best part about it is they are odorless. So if you need to wear them a few times in a row, it doesn't really matter. It's the best. Mack Weldon designs their clothes to fit your style and the demands of the modern life. They're my go-to choice for looking great without even trying. If you're ready to upgrade your wardrobe, get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order whenever you click the link in our show notes. That's MackWeldon.com, and make sure to go to the link in our show notes. Trust me, you won't regret it.
That's how that has to work. So that's what we had to go through. It's like you have the shooters, you have the analysts because of what we were dealing with, and then everybody started coming together and we started rewriting how things are supposed to be done. We had 20 years of wars to practice it. I mean, and then the war kind of in America of everybody worried about getting hit again. I mean, y'all had to deal with all that. So we're transitioning something for sure.
Well, that's when you had, because of what happened with 9/11 and it was such a big miss and everyone's kind of scratching their heads because the intel was fragmented. There was intel here, but agencies wouldn't talk. Yeah. It was a very competitive environment, and so that's when they created JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, and they realized like we have to work together. And you're right about that. That's when they realized we can't be doing this. This agency can't be competing with that agency or that agency. And I would be.
I don't know why we do that. I don't know why we do that. Girl, we do that.
We do.
I mean, you'll hear it after the fact. They'll be like, oh, yeah, they had the answer to that one. I'm like, why didn't... Man, I don't know. Capitalism, competition state. Everyone's trying to do the best they can, and in order to do that, you really can't get mad at them for it. But then, I mean, you can. So I get that. Yeah, we do that to ourselves. I don't know why, but we do it.
So at what point did you get put on the presidential detail?
Oh, you get that much later. So in your career as an agent, you'll help your supplement. You'll help with post standing or helping with different presidents. So I would have Clinton, I would have Bush Jr., but there's a point, they call it a phase 2. Phase 1 is you're in the field office, you work your cases, because we had law enforcement duties. We were criminal investigators.
Right.
You work your cases. I also happen to be a polygrapher, your favorite word, a polygraph examiner. So I did the polygraphs and I would help not just our cases, but I would travel the U.S. helping police departments. Police departments, because you brought it up, there are about 17,000 different law enforcement entities in the U.S. So we're so fragmented. They don't have the manpower, the help, the training. So I would get Secret Service. I'll give them credit. They would loan us out. There was only 30 examiners to help
that's an
them.
assignment inside of what you do. That's how. Okay.
Yeah, it was
a lot of people don't know that.
It was like a special, an internal unit.
Right. That's created. They go do something for a certain time, and then you come back.
Yeah. Check. Yeah. Like almost like your SEAL, but then within the SEALs there were special.
Absolutely. And you can do it individually with 2 people. There'll be a group of them. You never know. I mean, that's a great part about the job. You don't have any idea what's coming down there. You just know you got to deal with it.
I got to say, I know we're deviating. That's where I grew up. I spent my 20s in there, and that's the best thing I've ever.
Especially during our time there, man.
My mindset, how to think, how to move, how to be I try. I don't say I am. I try to be a person of integrity, a good human being. I just try to be self-sacrificing. I learned all that there, and I'm thankful for it. But to go back to what you asked, to go to be with the president, it's an internal selection process. The majority of agents never go. So all those agents you see that
do they want to go?
It's both.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
It's both.
Okay, check.
It's both. So
I'm just curious now.
You're 100% right. There's a group of agents that are like, I want nothing to do with it. I don't want to go. Send me to Waco. I'll go be with former President Bush. Life's simpler, easier. I have better quality of life. It's guys do that all the time. Or send me to Clinton. Or send me, to whoever. There's sometimes you can go to intel. There's intelligence divisions that you can go into where you're just doing intel. And then you could also ask for the president. Now, usually if you ask for the president, you have to do it in an internal selection. So almost like another mini internal academy where you try out.
Check.
And you have to pass that. And then even if you pass that, you may still go to the vice president. Not to take anything away from them, but there's just 2 avenues.
Sure.
At the end, there's no guarantee because there's supervisors that decide. It's like the draft, like the NFL draft. I'll take him, don't want her. He can go to vice president or he can go here. It works like that, but only a small group of us get to go.
How long can you stay on that?
The president's detail?
Yes.
4 years and then you're out.
That's it?
Yeah, because there's a burnout. You have no...
I get that. I'm well aware of that burnout. But I mean, and everything else that goes with that. I'm talking about if you could re-up and
they would let you leave
and come back.
You could go to headquarters, go to another field office, and then you can come back maybe as a supervisor.
You get requested? Does that happen?
If they ask for somebody?
Like if someone did a detail and then a new president comes in and requests that person.
Where I would see that
or does
happen.
That get a little thin?
No, they would allow that. So sometimes they would allow that because let's say you have, with the President Obama, he's running for office, right? So immediately when you're a candidate, you'll get your protection detail. So you get used to those folks, right?
Oh, sure. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
So then now he gets voted.
Stays with him the whole time once they get in.
Well, they offer it. They'll say now, okay, President Obama becomes president. Then they go to his agents and they say, who wants to go with him? Who doesn't? And then you'll see that division. Some guys will say, I'll go with him. Some guys will say, nope, no thank you, not going to the show. It was called the show because it was a show.
Right. And then the first lady has her own detail, right?
I did the first lady too.
I was about to say, I bet they put the best officers on the first lady. If I was the president, my first lady would have the best. Not me.
Well,
her.
I don't think he had the choice.
Yes, we do. We're the president of the United States, and I'm telling you right now that our ladies are everything to us.
Marcus,
and
when
the
you
best
run
of the
for
best
office.
go on the first lady.
When you run for office. So
My twin's doing that right now, and I'm going to make sure he follows that path.
So
I always thought about that. When they stack the detail, I'm like, man, that first lady's got to have the crew.
No, so it's all the same. It's all the Presidential Protective Division. But how they do it is you graduate each level up. So you go. So I started White House perimeter security. So that's bomb threats, anything happening to the White House. I was with that. Then,
But you can't imagine what comes in there, right?
well, people would leave stuff. Sometimes it was benign, but people would also test you. So people would leave stuff all the time just to see what your response time is and how you're going to handle things. So we had a JOC, Joint Operations Center, and I would man that sometimes. Like we all had a rotation. And so it was like this whole massive, just the White House perimeter security complex. But I mean, obviously it stretched out further, and then, air underneath, all that. But it's level. So you go from that to the next level. So I did White House access control. Then I did First Lady. Then I got to go to him. So it's almost like a stepping ladder. Like to go to him, there's no like, there you go. Really, they make you work for it. And, and they're happy to remind you that there's a door if you don't like it.
Yeah.
There's somebody waiting. Absolutely. There's somebody waiting to take your spot.
Do Secret Service ever, do you see their own politics playing a role into it? Like, I do not want to work with this person. I hate their politics.
No. I don't know how it's done, but I never experienced that while you're in, I guess because it's kind of, I guess, look at it this like, if you're in the military, you're a SEAL. It doesn't matter who the president.
Knew. Yeah. I did know who the president was, but I didn't know what my teammates, what you're about to say, like I didn't know what they felt about that.
Yeah, because you would go out and you wouldn't think, oh, well, this president or this politician having me do it. You're doing it for country.
Right.
So it's like that. Yeah. So for us, it wasn't, although we were closer to the person, it was that same mindset. I'm getting my orders and my duty is this. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
I'm doing that. So for you, it didn't matter who the president was. You were doing what you're supposed to do.
I only heard that when I came home and civilians talk. They're the ones that talk noise. Civilians. Yes. Like I knew who the president was, and I thought it would be cool to meet him. But other than that, we never talked about politics. I can remember if you found out somebody was Republican, most of us didn't even know what that was. Like really, you're just like, oh, it's a political party. We didn't talk about it. Definitely didn't argue.
Yeah.
Ever about stuff like
I feel
this.
Like today it's more.
It might be, but we didn't have. The wars were on. All we cared about was working. Same with y'all. There was always something going on.
It was your service,
your
duty. So you didn't pause to think like, who am I? But you also have to understand, like, you weren't just taking a bullet for the president. You're taking a bullet for president, his first family, fine. Former presidents, their spouses, okay, fine. Then you've got cabinet members, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Homeland Security. Then you have other people, and then foreign heads of state.
Yeah,
so if like the prime minister of whoever comes to the U.S., all foreign heads of state get protection because the U.S. does not want anybody getting assassinated on U.S.
Which is a great protocol. I get that. I think all of them should have that. I think they should have it for life. I think if you serve our people for about 4 years, that's probably the hardest job ever just because you got to listen to everybody complain.
It is.
And that's a blessing we should give them, and I completely agree with that.
Well, I think it was President Clinton.
Somebody who
signed
it, right? Yeah.
To make it 10 years, but then it was changed.
41 put it back, I think.
Somebody put it back. I can't remember her. You know what I'm talking about.
I just absolutely remember. I just remember hearing that. I was like, well, I think that job. I mean, have you seen what happens to them when they go through that? How like the way that ages them in 4 years.
Yeah,
I was like the least we could do.
Always ages.
Yeah, just give them a little comfort on the way on the back end.
The level of stress.
Oh yeah.
That they go through and they do age. I mean, I would sit. There was a certain post that was out. I can't give too much, but there's a certain post that was in proximity to the residence that was by the president's office, where you would see them and you'd see them up. You'd see him up.
It has to get to him.
3 in the morning, just. Paperwork, and then the stress of it. And you know what? People talk smack about you, and
that's what we do.
And then you have to get up on a stage and give a speech.
There you go.
And you can't get your feelings hurt.
Yeah.
And you can't have a moment of where you're being diminished, or you're like literally about to get on stage and whichever network has, is just destroying you, and you have to be able to have that
The
bandwidth.
craziest part is when they're running for president, how mean everybody is to them, and then they got to go in and run. I don't know why we do it like that. The decency on that, but it's switched somewhere.
It's called, I call it being a bucket head. I'm going to take out of your bucket so I can put in my bucket. I can't run on my own. I am disappointed in that.
What you're saying, yeah.
I can't run on my own merit. I have to crush you or slander you.
I hate that.
I hope, I don't know how we got to that way.
Our people don't forget stuff like that.
Hate.
That's the whole point. It's like, hey man, who could cock the most trash? And for the next, they remember that. I just think.
Like.
But it sets the tone.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tone. Thank you.
And then we wonder why everyone's hating on everybody if it's like, well, it starts from the top.
It starts from the campaigns.
Yeah.
I mean, when the campaigns are smearing the other opponent, the people start smearing, and then it's like
there's a difference between pointing some stuff out and just absolutely being mean.
that game of telephone when you whisper in someone's ear and you have to give them like one word, and then it goes to the next, to the next, to the next, and by the end of it, it's a totally different word. That's like what our campaigns have done. It starts from the top and then goes down to our people, and it twists and turns so many ways that it's just lies at the end. People are just telling lies and smearing candidates left and right. And
politics are ugly. I worked in the White House, and I've worked with across Congress, members of Congress, everybody, and it's just it's disheartening as to the way it is. It's disappointing because you feel like. And it's a hard job. I mean, when to put yourself in that position,
Anybody.
Once you put yourself in that position, it's open season on you. People just demolish you. So I think for me, like on a human level, because especially where you're protecting the president, like you're with him, and I remember when Bush was on his way out. I mean, people hated him, and they were saying horrible things. And I remember I had his daughter Barbara, and we were in New York, which is a very liberal city. And we would go places, and a lot of people didn't know she was his daughter. She didn't look. She was together with her sister Jenna, you'd be able to put it together. But there were times we'd go to places where there'd be posters of her dad with markings on them or making fun of him. I remember once we went to a store, and there were like these big bills with the president's face and just cartoon drawings on it. And she's next to me, and we're together. And I'm thinking, what must this be like for this girl to see her dad's face smeared everywhere? She never said anything. She never let anything show, but it's just cruel.
Yeah, that's crazy. So out of all of your time and everything you've done, what has been the most impactful or memorable moments for you during your whole career?
I think cases. People are always surprised, but when I worked criminal cases, or especially polygraphs where I would be called in to help with a difficult case, I think children's cases were the hardest ones, and I'm glad I wasn't a parent at the time.
Yeah, man.
Because I don't know how I would have fared, but I would do a lot of cases, sexual abuse cases against children, physical abuse, and we're talking, I've had cases like broken arms on a baby that's 3 months old, fractured skull in a baby that's 6 months old, sexual abuse of a full sexual encounter with a child that's 4 years old. Those were, I think, the hardest cases. And child porn. Most people are surprised but because it was the polygraph, I would help with those cases. I think those would be helping bring justice to those were probably, to me, the most meaningful. Don't get me wrong, being in the White House and standing next to history, that's great. But when you work a case and I never dealt with the victims, I'm kind of thankful I never got to see the victims or deal. I was always dealing with the suspects or the perpetrators. And then sometimes somebody would be suspected, and I could come in, and it happened on occasion, and I'm like, it's not this person. Sadly, a lot of people would always look at the dad, and I'm like, it's not always the dad. So I would come in. I had one case, I'm like, it's not the dad. Stop looking there. And somebody passes poly. So you could clear people. I think those were the most impactful because you're really impacting lives. But those were hard.
Yeah, golly, that's the child cases get me.
Well, it's getting a lot more exposure now. There's movies being done about this stuff. There's a lot of stuff coming out now, whereas back then it was a very hush hush thing. Didn't get a lot of media attention. I think it's starting to now. It's pretty bad here in the U.S.
I would have never known that the Secret Service deals with cases like that. In my mind, the Secret Service only does private protection. So that's neat to learn that y'all do other stuff.
Well, April 14th, 1865, President Lincoln that's the day he created the U.S. Secret Service. And he created them to fight counterfeit currency.
That's right.
A third of the U.S. currency at the time was counterfeit.
Oh, wow.
That's why it was started. Protection came later. I think we had like 3 U.S. assassination attempts. And then that's when there was no FBI or anything yet. And they said, okay, Secret Service, can you also do protection? So they started doing protection part-time.
Because there wasn't even a fence around the White House back in the day.
No, there was no fence.
Matter of fact, you could go into the foyer there and just...
You could go in. There were days...
Walk right... Yeah, certain days you could just walk right in there.
You know your history well. There were days where you could go in and you can ask for an audience with the president or somebody there.
How about that?
To make a complaint or to share something. Yes, it was wide open.
You had to be tough back because some of them boys got shot. Some of those presidents, it was rough being a president back in the day.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting that
it's rough being president today.
But you have protection
today, right. Our guys and gals we learned a lot growing up. We had to learn a lot. That's what I'm starting to see now.
How often have you, I'm assuming, but you've been to the White House a few times?
Yes, ma'am.
He got the Navy Cross in the White House.
Wow.
And
when was that?
by George
41
Bush.
gave it to me.
Yep.
When was that? Do you remember what year? I'm trying to see if I was there.
No. Well,
wasn't it 2006? Or was
if she says it was. That gets me off the hook because if she threw a date out there,
I'll be there. But I know Marcus's history very well.
Yeah, I got pinned.
So Operation Red Wing was 2005.
I thought it was 07 when I wound up in the White House, though.
Well, the book came out in 07, and it was in the book.
Okay, great. Well, I didn't know there was going to be a test.
I think it was 06. If it wasn't, it was early 07.
I missed it. I hadn't gone to the White House yet.
June 28th when I got that sucker cross pinned all over me. And, but that was great to go into the White House. Like, if you've never had a chance to do that, just to go see what we've built. Like, what you're really looking at is the country and what we built and the majesty in that, right? That's what I loved about it. And then, I was there with my family, and it was an amazing experience. And I think everyone should have a chance to go see it, at least. I mean, you think this is in America, right? The house that would be a kingdom that looked like a castle. It's not. It's a little White House.
It's simple.
It's simple. It's real simple.
It's actually
like
very
it that way.
simple.
Yeah.
It's small. It's not like when I went to Buckingham Palace, I was just like,
how about that?
Man.
And they have palaces everywhere.
I was like, Buckingham Palace. I'm like, we have nothing on these. It was a maze. The White House is very. I remember when I first showed up. It's simple. It's small. Mm-hmm. Oval Office is simple. The rooms are simple. Even like the way they would prep the food.
Yeah, I love the fact that we give our presidents and them amenities. Like the food should be fantastic. The cars, we move them in. The Beast. That sucker. How about the and everybody?
Everyone loves
the Air
the
Force
Beast.
One. I know they just Cadillac. You just got a
Caddy.
Is it still a Caddy? It better be a Cadillac still.
I think it's still a Cadillac.
Okay, good. And then Air Force One. It's like when our man shows up, he'd better show up in style because we have that here in America. We have people that don't have style, but we got a little bit of both, right? So
we went to the island of Palau several years ago in Micronesia, and the president of Palau, they've kind of recreated what we have here. Like, he has his own White House. There's a Capitol. Their congressional members show up in Hawaiian shirts and flip-flops. It's the funniest thing ever. It's this tiny little island.
Is it, or is it the greatest?
Yeah, but it was just really neat to see that they took what America had created and they just recreated a model there, and it works for them. But it was just a really neat thing to see.
Do you know a lot of countries do that? Actually, they mirror us. I would see that because we would work with foreign heads of state. So when a prime minister or whoever would come to the U.S., we would work with their teams. And there were some countries, I won't say which country, but there was one country specifically. Everybody always spied on everybody, but they would try to get intel from us, from like someone like me working the advance. Oh, how do you set your cars up? Or how do you do this? And you would see that they would mimic what we would do security-wise with their own country. So you always had to be careful. I remember one country was like, hey, we let them sit in our armored vehicle. So we let their protectee sit in our armored vehicle. because we would drive their protectee around in New York, but they wanted to see the vehicle.
Yeah.
And then they wanted to take a photo of it. And I remember I was like, I'm not doing it. No. I was like, it's a good limo, it's secure. But phone calls made it up the chain of command, and they're like, just let them see the vehicle. And I'm like, I'm just letting you know they're gathering intel on the cars. The cars are supposed to be super tight. Like, what do you want me to do? So they had me kind of do it a certain way, but they do. A lot of countries mimic and mirror what we do, which is a good thing, but it's also...
It's a tough place to be. Because you're like, hey, I want you to be safe and be better, but then I can't give up this. We think like that.
Are you feeling confident in every aspect of your life? Well, keep that confidence going strong and to the bedroom with Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule may be busy. With Hims, you can get treated for ED without even stepping foot outside of your house. So why choose Hims? It's revolutionizing men's healthcare with affordable sexual health treatments right from the comfort of your own couch. Options include chewable hard mints, brand name Viagra, and budget-friendly alternatives up to 95% cheaper. Hims is entirely online and hassle-free. Just answer a few questions, receive personalized treatment from medical professionals, and enjoy free shipping on prescribed meds. No insurance needed. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/TNQ. That's HIMS.com/TNQ for personalized treatment options. hims.com/TNQ. Remember, prescriptions require an online consultation. Please see the website for details and safety information. Subscription is required. Price may vary based on product and plan.
Like they truly probably asking for that information just to make things better.
Sometimes.
And then,
sometimes they spy, Marcus.
All the time they spy.
Yes.
It's both. I mean, it comes
and
with
you know
both
what?
packages.
They're so slick about it.
They
offer
are.
you food. They're like, oh, come, we're going to take you to a restaurant.
Yeah, they're great.
There was one country that would feed us all the time. And they're like, oh, we're going to do a big meal. And they put us in these private rooms. And one day the guy was like, oh, so how does this go? How does that go? And he left the room at one point. I looked over to my colleague. I'm like, this guy's their intelligence. And he's trying to, I'm like, don't answer anything. I was like, just be careful. I was like, he's getting intel on us. And, but they're smart. I don't know if it was like this in the military. Like, the best way to get to some of the guys was through their belly.
Yeah.
And
like, how do you not see it?
My father said that.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't have to beat the hell out of us. You don't have to waterboard anybody.
Food.
You feed them good food. And if you get them drunk, not drunk, but intoxicated, they'll tell you if they hate you. And they'll tell you if they love you. Yeah. They'll tell you everything. Like, if you can talk to somebody and then you're having a great time eating and drinking and they just want to talk. Because that's the best way to interrogate somebody, man. Not put a beating on them.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
And just get to know them, and they'll tell you. They want to tell you.
Well, the problem that they were having with waterboarding and all that stuff, you're getting intel. The issue was you're getting good intel and you're getting bad intel.
Yeah, both.
And so you don't know what you're chasing.
Because they just want it to stop.
They just want it to stop. And so, and I know this because of the interrogation stuff. So there's like the Hague. There's something called the Hague. And actually, it's when Obama came in. He said, all right, no more of these, torturing or trying to compel people. And I get it I understand what he's doing from a humanitarian standpoint. But from a tactical standpoint, one of the problems with that is you don't know if your intel is good and you don't know if you're chasing the wrong stuff. But at the same time, not everybody talks. Like it's such a hard thing to do.
One of the hardest, most difficult things we have to do. We have to do it. You know what I mean? In that situation.
Well, they torture too, and it's interesting because I learned when I became an interviewer that certain countries torture certain ways. They have ways. It's like, if you're going to go to this country,
absolutely they do.
Did they brief
absolutely
you on
they do, man. You want to know why the Vietnamese and all them were so great at torture? The French taught them that. I mean, because there's people absolutely that have some awesome ways to get a person's attention. That's the best way I'll say that.
Yeah, some countries will use waterboarding. Some countries will use electric shock.
Yeah.
Some will use, like, they have their own.
Isolation. It's down the list.
Watch James Bond. It'll tell you what all the countries do.
Yeah, that's a great point. Probably what it, yeah, thank you.
Do you think it's accurate?
Probably.
I
know what I mean?
Probably. But we spent, Marcus declared January James Bond January, and I had never sat and watched an entire James Bond. So I started with the first one, 1963. And watched all, I think 27 or 28 of them, and all the way through. Like every day I was watching a James Bond. And what's interesting, if you watch it all chronologically, he's in a different country every time. And in every single country he's getting tortured by somebody, by one of the government. And so you just see all of the different forms of torture.
And if they didn't do it, they did after.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking about a lot of times we can set somebody up for that.
Yeah.
What do you think's the worst one of all of them?
Fire, probably.
Oh, well, that's, yeah, you want to change somebody, catch them on fire, for sure. It depends on what you're looking for. Like, if you just, like, if you detest somebody so bad that you just want them to suffer, isolate them. Just leave them there. Give them enough to survive. That's it. I mean, like, if you really want them to suffer, because then everything gets eaten up. If you want them to be punished, you know, then there's the pain part. But I mean, you hit them. Human beings by nature are designed to be around somebody else, so they'll deteriorate into a monster, and then they'll start fighting themselves, and then it'll turn into whatever.
So how long in full were you in the Secret Service?
Almost 13 years, a little over 12.
At what point did you decide to transition into a professor?
Yeah, well, actually, I went into news.
Oh, you went into news?
I started doing news. So I worked because you worked in the White House, they had a White House press pool. So sometimes we would babysit the press. So I'd always have the exposure. And
you'll get trained in that too, right? Forgive me for...
No, I mean, you get trained to keep your mouth shut because they're very good at, you know, like, hey, where we go? Because we were not allowed to tell them anything. And sometimes we had movements and they had no idea. So the press would actually always be there and they would always just be on standby. Literally, they'd hold in the press area, the press room, and okay, we have a movement. They get a schedule, but they wouldn't always get everything. And they'd be like, hey, when are we leaving? What are we doing? Where are we going? Sometimes they'd be completely in the dark, but they always had an agent because you wanted to make sure they didn't veer off or do anything. But one of the producers from CNBC was like, hey, you ever thought about doing news? And that's kind of where that seed was planted. And I was like, no. She's like, you know, you might, you know, do well covering national security or crime. You know, it might be, she's like, you have a different demeanor about it. It might become different if bad news coming from you or you talking about crime. And it took me some time to decide. It was hard. I wasn't sure, but I was like, you know, an opportunity like this doesn't come often. And so I transitioned, and my first segment was with NBC.
Oh, neat.
And I just started doing news. And then I went to Columbia University right after I left. I was thinking, well, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I better learn. I went back to school and I got a master's in journalism.
Wow.
And that's how I started in television, just, you know, mass shooting or this happened or, okay, we have border stuff, you know, just different things, cartels, drugs. So just coming in and, you know, the way you have the political commentators, but I would do it for national security. Sometimes they try to put me in the politics and I'm like, you know, I stay out of it. At least up until now, I've stayed out of it.
You got to be a special type to sit in that arena all the time.
Yeah.
Just talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, I saw you testify at one point.
My brother.
Was that your brother?
He has a twin.
I'm a twin.
Yes.
He has an identical twin that is in Congress now. He is
Marcus. Okay.
Yeah. So Morgan, his identical twin, they were both Navy SEALs. And then Morgan went into politics.
He spoke very well.
Yes.
They better.
Yeah.
He did. He spoke very well.
Freaking better.
Yes. It's so funny because a lot of people don't understand that there's two of them. And
I remember from the book.
Yeah.
Because you trained together and you both went in together, and I forgot about that. That's correct.
Yeah. Most people, if they didn't know, they forgot, or
but
they just
even
don't know.
People that know both of them, they get it mixed up. They still think that Marcus
happened this morning.
Yeah, it happened this morning. Someone was like, when Marcus is done with his congressional thing, I'm like, Marcus isn't doing the congressional thing.
You should just say, yeah, thank you.
Well, my brother and I have an arrangement. That was kind of one of those things that's earned from the people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a different kind of quality. Yeah, normally I would.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm a twin. I take full advantage of that whole thing. I have my entire life. Okay, we played that twin thing like you couldn't believe.
How does he like it? How is it?
Hates jobs, loves doing the service.
Mm-hmm.
He was telling me, he's like, there's no wins up there. It's like there's not a win like we normally get, and that's difficult for the military. I was like, well, your win was when you got elected. Now you got to go earn it. Now you got to go earn your win from your election. So when we kind of switched the way we thought about it, it's like, 'cause every day is a battle. He's a scrapper anyways, loves to fight. He's got the temperament for it, and he's got the background. So I'm proud of him.
That's amazing.
He's very intellectual too. So he'll sit and he'll study
isn't that
something.
great? Isn't that great having one of them around?
Yeah, he'll study until he knows everything all the way around before he talks on it. So
he spoke very well.
Yeah,
because I wasn't sure when I saw that, and I was like, is that Marcus? So he spoke very well. I remember saw him testifying.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's really neat is he's our congressman, so we get to vote for him. We went and voted a couple weeks ago.
And how many? I should know this, and I don't. How many
2 years
terms they get?
Each term is 2 years,
and they get how many terms total?
They only get one. So
you can keep being a congressman.
That's what I mean. Is there like a term limit?
Not on ours,
term limit. They are trying to make a term limit now. It's actually a bill that's been proposed to make I think is it 20 years? So 10 terms.
They give him that much? I thought that was a lot.
That's still a long time.
That's still a long time, man.
I don't
That's
know
a hard
for
job.
sure,
The
but
congressman's hard.
There are some that have been in there for 40 years. So it's, or more.
That's a 2-year term.
But it's a 2-year term, yeah.
Freaking do that, man.
And so you're always campaigning.
So how can you ever get anything done?
You don't.
That's my point. Especially the longer
it's like a hamster wheel. There's a
reason why we do it every 2 years is because you got an idea, you want to get one thing fixed, we're going to put you in there, work on what you said you would, and then we'll get you out of there and put somebody else in there.
But it takes longer than 2 years to get a bill passed.
That's the problem.
Through Congress, and then it has to go to Senate. So it doesn't work. The whole setup doesn't work.
It's 12 years, by the way.
The term limit?
The proposed term limit.
The proposed term limit.
Because senators are 6 years. They get 6 in there.
So when you're in Secret Service, is there like a retirement time?
There is. Age 57, they yank you. Like whether you want to go or not, they make you go.
Okay.
You can't stay. But you have to do, it's interesting, when I was the NYPD, it was 20 years and you can retire. If it's U.S. Secret Service, it's a federal agency, it's 25 years or by the age of 57.
Captain, huh?
Okay.
Yeah. So they pull you out. When do they make you pull out in the military? Is there an age that they force you out?
It's like a higher tenure after that. After 20, it's a rank thing. So if you're not progressing, then they'll move you to the side.
Oh no, with us, like they don't care what rank you are, you're gone. 57. I think it's because of the physical component of the job.
But that's changing too. The human body. I mean, Mike Tyson's about to get in the ring again.
Oh my God, I just saw that.
Can you believe that? I mean, I can believe it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from Mike, but my point with that is I think we've kind of reconditioned the human body.
What do you think? I want to know what you think. Do you think he's going to...
I love Mike Tyson.
I give him kudos for doing it. I'm just like...
Yeah, dude.
It's going to be a tough one for him, but...
Dangerous fighter there is, man.
I feel like the whole thing's rigged. And it's just a payoff thing, and they're going to make him lose.
Well, that's good, too. I hope Mike gets paid. He's a champ. I love him to death. I grew up with Mike Tyson, man. I don't even know him, but...
We met him once.
Yeah, I've met him a few... Yeah, we sure did. I've met him a few times, actually.
You got to get Mike here.
That might be one of my bucket lists. Yeah, if I get to interview him.
That's a bucket list. We would love that.
I saw that and I'm thinking, man, I'm like, I mean, even as I get older, like, it's for me to do what I used to do. It's so much more work, the effort.
That should go into a fight.
I'll tell you this: if you're asking me like when the next attack's going to come from, I think our next big attack's going to be a cyber attack. I think that's the way everything's going. We're getting hit now anyway, everywhere. I mean, you're getting attacked everywhere in every which way. So I think that's going to be the next big thing. Power grids, everything's so tech heavy, even your phone. Think about your phone. There's no landlines anymore. Mm-hmm. Do you know on 9/11, the only thing that worked was a landline? That's the only thing. That. So now if something were to happen, everything goes out, your cell phone's going to be junk. Nobody's got landlines anymore. I think personally, and just from talking to the community of people in Intel, and I think it's going to be cyber.
We probably should have kept the landlines.
I think landlines are good. It's the only thing that's going to work, but they're phasing out. The other thing that might happen, that could happen, did you see what happened in Russia? The mall attack, the mall shooting.
Oh,
yeah. It just happened in Russia. I believe it was at I don't know if it was a mall or a concert. Right? It was at a mall or a concert.
I think those might have been connected.
Were they two?
The mall to the arena.
There was a shooting, and it was like something like 133 people, like some large amount of people shot, and there were a handful of gunmen, and they went in and they just started shooting everybody. So they're calling it a terrorist attack. So I think something like that might be more likely. I don't know about another 9/11 magnitude. I'm not saying no, but I'm leaning more towards cyber, grid, and then maybe organized type of shooting. But those are the things that I'm hearing from the trickles of information I'm hearing.
What about all of the people from the Middle East and China that are coming through the border? You think there will be like an internal...
I think it's going to be a problem. First of all, just from a structural standpoint, and I'm saying this, my parents are immigrants. Every sovereign country has to have a border, just period. Doesn't matter where you're from. And you also have to know what's going in or out. And you also have to not be naive enough to think that everybody is coming with good intention. Like that's absurd. So you have to control your borders. So I think they're going to be massive issues. They're not going to manifest now. It's going to manifest later. Also, the infrastructure itself, I feel like I'm a congressperson now, just the infrastructure itself, we have to be able to support and maintain. So in New York, Texas has been shipping them up to New York. They're New York City. And everyone's complaining like Texas is sending them over. I was like, well, Texas was asking for help. Nobody's paying attention. What do you think? Good. Yeah. I'm probably getting in trouble for saying that, but like, what do you want? Like this, you're talking about millions of people that need food, clothing, shelter. You can sustain immigration, but it has to be kind of like a structured flow. Right?
My argument to that is they don't need food and shelter. They have money. They're paying the cartels
thousands of dollars to cross over.
Thousands and thousands of dollars, like 10 and above. I mean, most families in America couldn't just pull out $10,000 and do something with it. So for them to have that money just to
who's giving them that money to come over?
Yeah, who's giving them that money to come over?
I think you're going to see a mixture of both. I think it's going to be a mixture of both. Like where people get that money, how they borrow it. But I do think that there are people that are being intentionally pushed through and giving that money. It's not a good, the whole thing's not good. It's just not good.
And a lot of... My cousin's husband is Border Patrol, so we get to go down there and we've seen it. We've been in the processing centers. We've seen all of it.
Social work, I've heard now. I haven't been, but I heard it's like they're just social workers now.
Oh, girl, you can't imagine. Yeah, you want to talk about getting pulled off the line.
It's terrible.
Imagine you having to check tickets in the Secret Service to one of the ball games or having to work somewhere in a tent. It's unbelievable. It's like I said, we got to have rules. We got to have guidelines, even if it's open. I mean... And the reason you got to have a border is like if we don't have a border, then they wouldn't know where to go, first of all.
But you have to have it for security reasons. Drugs come in, prostitution, child trafficking. Also, you know what? As a daughter of immigrants, my parents put in the paperwork to come here legally. So what message are you sending to everybody else in the world who is doing this legally and waiting their turn? They're the
ones that should be pissed.
They're waiting 7 years
or longer,
8 years to get paperwork so that they could come over. One woman, I go to Dunkin' Donuts, that's my only vice. She's from Bangladesh. She's been waiting for years, working at Dunkin' Donuts, making minimum wage, saving money, and putting paperwork to have her husband come here. Years this woman's been waiting. So what message do you send to those folks who are really legitimately waiting as well? There's just so many multiple avenues where this thing is just... It makes no sense.
Yeah. My sister's dating a Filipino and he's here on a student visa. He's about to graduate and he's terrified that if he doesn't get a job, he'll have to go back. And I'm like, it's so crazy that if you were just to fly to Mexico and just walk over and cross our border, you would be fine. But trying to do it the legal way is damn near impossible.
May I ask a question again? This is my ignorance. Why? It sounds terrible. It's dumb, but why is it like this? Like, I don't understand. Like, why? What's the statute? What's the problem? I keep hearing about it. I'm in the newsroom, and I don't quite understand. Like, why?
Oh no, it's like somebody announced that there's a rock concert that no one knows what it's about, and everyone's just kind of caught. Because we've had this for since before we were kids, since before we were born,
right?
And there hasn't been this many.
So
we've had people coming over, but we're talking about 10 million.
But back in the day,
what prompted that?
Well, I remember back in the day when people would come over illegally and they would have a coyote that was like a hired cartel or hired someone to kind of sneak them over the border. It was very few and far between. And when it did happen, they were terrified of getting caught because there was a huge punishment for it. Now there is zero punishment. You actually get money to get on a bus or to take an airplane. You get free hotel rooms. You get free food. We saw the processing centers. They give them.
Yeah, I don't understand why we give them
food, medical. They have.
I get them. Hey, you can come over here, but why are we giving them that?
If they're diabetic, they're getting like 6 months of diabetes medicine. I mean, where our own people are suffering and can't afford the medicine. So there is some huge agenda that isn't exposed, and
we're not seeing something.
Yeah, it should be exposed on what is actually going on and why they're allowed to do this.
You know what? I think too, maybe some people live in theory, the idea of how the world should be.
Of course.
It should be open. We should be nice to one another, this and that. But I think when you live too much in that space, you're not living in reality, and you have to live somewhere in the middle. And so I think there's this ideology that, and I'm fine with that, but then at the same time, you also have to look at the functionality of things.
How we get there. Like, I know what you want. Kingdom, heaven on earth, everybody does what it's supposed to do.
But it's not that way.
But you got to have some discipline in there to make that work.
Structure.
And manners.
Rules, the laws, yes.
We've had them since the beginning. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. Okay, so you wrote a book too.
I did.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Becoming Bulletproof. Okay. I did. I did. So it came out in 2020, right at the peak of COVID. And
yeah, you did.
Yeah.
It did. And you know what's wild? When it came out, it was supposed to come out April of 2020, and March 2020, I'm talking to the publisher, and they're like, we're going to postpone this, COVID, we can't, it's not going to do well. I had all this media stuff, as I'm sure when you did your stuff, and it all went away, and and they're like, you need to cancel, and I was like, let me think. And I remember hearing them, and I was like, this is all very fear-based, and I knew everybody was experts in their field, but they're all guiding me from emotion. I could tell everybody was afraid. And they're like, wait a few more months, this COVID thing will go away. And I remember pausing, thinking, all right, why did I write this book? I wrote this book to help people. Resilience, mindset, performance, reading people, all that. And living fearlessly, not fearlessly, because it's not the same thing. And I called them up and I said, the book's going to go. I wrote this to help people. And if in principle the book's good, it's going to do well. If that's what it's designed to do, let it go. Also, though, I was able to see the opportunity because everyone was so fear-based, and I'm thinking, okay, well, where's the opportunity here? Everybody's home, and it was the beginning of COVID, so people didn't know what to do with themselves. I'm like, they'll read my book.
Yeah.
I was like, well, they can't go to the store, but Amazon's still delivering.
Yeah.
They can get it on Amazon. I was like, everyone else is canceling their books. More space for my book. So and that goes back to training. So I was able to kind of pull back and see that they're making decisions based on fear and they're missing the opportunity. So it comes out, it does really well, published in multiple languages all over the world. And so 4 years now, Simon & Schuster's like, hey, we want to re-release it with a new cover and afterward. And it just came out, was it last week or something?
Very cool.
So it was very humbling. But, and that goes back to how we started, Marcus. You said confidence and trusting yourself and believing yourself. And I went back to that. And sometimes we can simplify things and think, and that's what I did. I was like, why did I write this? I was like, if I wrote this to help people, then that's the principle behind it. Mm-hmm. It'll either do well or it'll bomb, either which way.
Yeah.
We got it out there, though.
Dude,
That's how it works.
pretty cool.
So they can order it on Amazon, Becoming Bulletproof.
Becoming Bulletproof. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it anywhere. But yeah, it's 3 parts. Protection, protect yourself. So all the protection stuff I learned about how we protected the president and all our protectees, like the things we did and put into place, put it down for the average person. You know, what you need to do, how you need to think. Even cyber, passwords, all that stuff's in there. Also mental resilience, such an important thing. How do you deal with difficult situations? Rejection, which is just like moving forward, hearing no and not letting things like really just soul crush you. So mental resilience. Part 2 is reading people, which is all polygraph, assessing behavior. Also, there's a section in there on detecting truth. Do you know it's easier to know when somebody's telling the truth versus when they're telling lies? It's actually easier to look at someone and be like, this is truthful versus this is a lie. But I put it all in there, all the things I learned, because to this day, reading people, not everybody has good intentions, and even good people in pursuit of their own self-interest will make choices that can cause us harm. You know, not that they're bad, but I'm
sure. That's situational.
Exactly. What's best for my situation, but maybe for your situation isn't good. So you need to be able to navigate that. It's our responsibility to know what is going on around me, my situational awareness. So that's part 2. And then part 3 is influence, how to connect with people. So we talked about finding things in common, priming. You brought that up before when you gave an example, and I'm drawing a blank, Marcus, when somebody was saying something negative and they're skewing it negatively, and I said, oh, that's priming. Priming people. How do you prime somebody to perceive something positively versus negative? Reflection, using reflection in words. So,
and this stuff works. This isn't something. I mean, that's stuff. It's been road tested.
Yes, this is stuff that I was trained on, that I was taught. It's not the world by Evy. It's the world by what I learned, and it's the top strategies the top negotiators use in the U.S. government, in the UK, the intel communities. This is what we would use to get information from people, and also how to deal with high conflict people, because high conflict people are everywhere in life, not just
even in families.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
that's usually where you find them first.
Yeah, there's a lot of family dynamic where someone just is always the one causing chaos and stress.
Well, it goes back to, one of the things people ask me, they're like, how do I navigate conflict and stress? And it's like, who are the 5 people you're around the most? And sometimes family is a huge issue for people. Sometimes you can't cut them out, but there's a way to create space.
Yeah, of course.
Where you limit that interaction or watch the conversation.
Problem is, it becomes a defensive mechanism when you grow up. You use it on other people, and it's kind of humanity, right?
I know.
People
tough. Are the problem. We're the problem. We're the problem.
Well, I was like, hey, we give you all the tools, but you still got to train in them. Like, you still got to learn how to deliver that message, because you could say some phrases that'll just absolutely upset somebody, and there's a way to finesse that in there, and there's timing. It's hard to live. It's hard to communicate. It really is. I mean, it's a learned experience. So age is rank. You can't get ahead of or behind it. And anybody who's even a younger age that can articulate things very well, you can tell they don't have experience to back that up. It just doesn't hit you as hard. And if no one's telling you that, then life can be tough, man.
What my grandmother used to say, heaven and hell are all here on earth. Yeah. She was like, that's what she would say. She was like, it's all here.
It's legit.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, how can people follow you? And
EvyPoumpouras.com or at Evy. I know I've got the long Greek last name, but Evy, EVY, and then Poumpouras.
Love it. Thank you for coming on.
I appreciate you guys so much. It was such an honor.
Thank you.
Marcus, I flew all the way out here for you just to meet you in person.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate you, sir. I appreciate everything you've done.
God bless you.
This is the Team Never Quit podcast. So buckle up, Buttercup.